Peace, family. Peace, peace. How's everyone doing? Let me know if I sound good to you. Let me know. Just throw some ones in the chat. I just want to make sure that you can hear me. So just let me know if you can hear me. All right. So, peace, everyone. I see we have some people already here. I am so happy that you made it here again today on my channel, MaatSpeaks. Welcome, welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for letting me know that I sound good. All right. So, we are going to jump in here. Just remember here at MaatSpeaks, if you are new to the channel, or you need a reminder here at MaatSpeaks, we work on building a code and culture, maintaining the principles, and learning how to build with these principles, which are the principles of Ma'at. And we first do this by looking inward, and then we extend that out to our families and ultimately our communities. So remember, as you enter, make sure to hit that like button and share this conversation with whomever you think would want to listen in to this conversation. And don't forget, if you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Remember, you can support the channel in a few ways. So, as you know, I love drinking my tea. So, you can support the channel by buying me some tea, just, cup of tea, a box of tea, whatever you want. And that is at buymeacoffee.com/MaatSpeaks. And then also, here's my Cash App if you want to donate to the channel, MaatSpeaks, Venmo, MaatSpeaks, and also my PayPal, which is Gen Health Revolution, which that is also my Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at Generational Health Revolution. And my website is generationalhealthrevolution.com. Be on the lookout for my blog that I will be adding onto the website, hopefully very, very soon. Okay, so everyone, I want to thank you for coming in. Let's take a look, family, and see who is in the chat. Always, thank you for being here, my love. Peace to you. I appreciate you always being here. And my sis, Inya, thank you for being here as well. I always appreciate you. Hope you are doing well. And my brother, Yapo, I appreciate you for being here as well. Thank you for always coming through and adding some gems to the chat. And then Sherelle, peace, Sherelle. I'm glad to see you. Peace to you. Hope all is well with you. And Arshawn. Hello, hello. Hey, Arshawn, peace to you. Glad to see you. All right, everyone. So if you're new, let me know that you're new here. If you are seeing this stream after it's over, just leave me a comment in the chat, well, in the comment section, and just let me know what you thought about this. So we are going to be having a conversation. You saw the thumbnail, and it's about Black women being able to truly embrace the soft life. So we might have some different takes on it. There are a lot of conversations that go around as far as the soft life. So I'm not really one side or the other, but just to let you know, these past few weeks, we've been kind of tackling topics within like capitalism, um, the whole idea of like celebrities, celebrity worship, and how that ties into our community. So like last week, I did talk about extremes, but then a couple weeks before that, we did talk about capitalism and how we use capitalism against one another. And so then, I was, kind of thinking about the whole idea of how we end up paying a lot of attention to celebrities and all of that. So I invited my sister here to have this conversation with me. We've had this conversation offline, so I said, why not have this conversation online together and talk about this, the whole idea of soft life? Because I remember talking to her on the phone and being like, as Black women, can we really embrace the soft life movement? So welcome my sister, Hanifa, and just tell us what you got going on before we get started. Anybody who does not who don't know about her channel, she can tell you all about it. Peace.
Oh, hey, peace to everyone. Peace to you, my aunt. Like I said, my apologies for my attire. I was running around, and so please forgive me for wearing a hat in the house. Yeah. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on my YouTube. Well, you can subscribe to my YouTube page. It is my name, Hanifa Nayela. I do talk about different topics, mainly around self development, parenting, and issues that affect the Black collective. Um, what was the other thing? Oh, and tomorrow on my page at 6 p.m., not 5, because I usually go on at 5. At 6 p.m., I will be tackling with Diallo Kenyatta. We will be discussing will Black capitalism save us? And so that's going to be a very interesting and much needed conversation, particularly in this space. Yeah, because there's a lot of encouragement towards the direction of capitalism and the idea that that is what is going to help us as a collective. So tune in tomorrow at 6 p.m. for that. That is all I have, Maat. And thank you for having me, Maat. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yes, of course. Thank you for coming, even though you were running around. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. So yeah, so it's kind of funny that you're having that conversation tomorrow, because that's kind of I've said this offline to you, just about how most things in our community and how we deal with one another, it comes back to capitalism.
Mm,
And even when I think of we have this so-called gender war in
mm-hmm,
these spaces,
mm-hmm,
and a lot of it is this like competition or this debate whether what men should do, what
Mhm.
women should do.
Mhm.
And it all leads back to capitalism. If you talk about hypergamy, it leads back to capitalism. So a lot of these things, when we talk about how we're not able to kind of function as a unit, or even the fact that even people who are business owners or people who it's hard for you to be successful. Well, I'm gonna put it this way: it's hard for us to imagine the idea of um the ideal of success that we would want
Mhm.
without kind of participating fully in capitalism. And so, I was thinking about that in this gender war and all this kind of stuff. And then we started talking about like the soft life movement and things like that. So, you know, I think a lot of the things we also do, we take our cues from celebrities, from social media,
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
reality TV shows.
Yeah.
So there was a point, right? Like it reminds me of the whole independent phase.
Mhm.
So we had this independent phase, right? Black women had this independent phase, like I am survivor. Remember the Destiny's Child song, I am a survivor.
Mhm.
All of that. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna work harder. Those were the lyrics of the song.
Mhm.
And then there were some other songs. There was a lot of different songs, like um there are a lot of different songs like the independent. It was like the independent kind of verbiage that you heard a lot.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
now we're kind of going to like the pendulum is swinging, and now it's like embracing the soft life, and most women don't even want to be, a lot of women say I don't want to be known as the strong woman. I don't want that label anymore. Don't call me
Mhm.
strong anymore. Like that's too
Mhm.
much. And so now we're here where we're talking about the soft life and what that actually means. So what when you hear the term soft life, or from what you have heard in these social media streets, what do you picture? Or I guess first tell me, what is the image of the soft life movement that you know of, and then what is soft life, and then you can tell me what soft life is to you.
Mhm. This okay. So what's soft like? Okay, so I'll start with what image it evokes
Mhm.
based on what we're seeing, labeled as the soft life.
Right.
So based on what we're seeing labeled as soft life, there's a lot of privilege involved. There is socioeconomic status to be considered, because when the soft life is portrayed, it's not necessarily one of how can I say it? It's not necessarily one of solid. It's not separate from materialism. Oftentimes, when we see it portrayed in social media, there's a heavy attachment of materialism. There's a heaviness of materialism that's included. So there's this component of luxury, right? There's this component of with travel, right? Yeah, because yeah, those two things, those two things alone, which is still rooted in consumerism, right? So and I'll tell you what my take is after, but yeah, when I think of what's being portrayed is this idea of luxury, travel, being able to spend, to consume, and for me, I'm not impressed, right? Because you guys are still not even chipping away at what the real issue is, right? In fact, you guys are participating and adding to it, right? In a sense. And I like what you said about taking our cues from celebrity life. There's this thing that we have as a people, and I know what it's from, and without getting into all of that, there's this thing that we have where we don't really understand what how classism works, right? And so we think the black person who is a billionaire has the same thing in common with us who are not, right? That's an issue in itself, right? We think that they care about the same things that we do. That we think that they navigate the this system the way that we do, right? Right. We really make that mistake. And so when we start to take our cues from them in reference to this particular topic, you think because they are black and they have access to that, that because you only identifying with their skin color at this point, right? You're not even identifying with their status,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not even putting that into perspective. So what it does is it gives you this false hope that, and I'm still on social media because I think differently about it. It gives people this false hope. Well, she's a black woman, and if she can act, if
Right.
she is pushing the soft life, and this is what it looks like, then I too can have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we're not looking at the fact that this is somebody who is wealthy, and that's the problem with using celebrity as
Right.
our blueprint, right? For this type of messaging. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
one. The other part of it for me, when I think the soft life, it evokes different things in me, right? I think that, I'm about pushing rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm big on that. I think that our people, because of how much we've worked and grind and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things for this society, that I think it is due to us. I think that is a part of reparations, right? That's a
Right.
part of reparations that we can take back on our own. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to push back on women pushing the soft life, because if you're saying the soft life to me, and for me, when I hear soft life, I hear the opposite of hard life, right? I hear I'm not grinding anymore. I'm not grinding myself in the ground anymore, right? I am
Mm-hmm.
no longer going to be a slave for capitalism just to prove my value and my worth, right? So a person like me, when I hear soft life in that sense, that's what I go to. But
Right.
when I see the images that are put before us of what soft life is, it doesn't align with my thinking. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, soft life then says, I'm going to take care of my mental health. I'm not going to put these corporations, right, before my peace and my well-being and that of
Mm-hmm.
my family, right? I'm not going to work myself in the ground. I'm not going to be living out of my masculine just so I can navigate these spaces. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and quit that job, right? For something that doesn't demand that much of my time or myself. For me, that's embracing soft life, right? It has
Right.
nothing to do with consumerism. Nothing. Because
Mm-hmm.
I can live a soft life without leaving my home. And this was where the privilege come in. But we're going to get into that. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can live a soft life without spending money, my aunt. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, you either have agency or you don't. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have agency, if you don't have agency, you better be trying to figure out ways to get that back. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have agency over yourself, right, you can live the soft life without traveling to Dubai and Aruba. And nothing is wrong with those things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an idea of this is what soft life is. But I think the soft life is very much multi-layered.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Very well said. I want to shout out some people who came through. Andy Jackson, peace to you. Thank you for coming through. And let's see. Oh, the water bearing a two. Glad to see you here again. Peace to you. And not other than Sir Hal Speaks. Peace, brother. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate you coming through and showing some love. Yeah, and I see Inya, you said something. Yeah, you said Miss Independent by Neo. Yes, yeah. So that was something that was really being pushed. Now, this is a good question, Iyapo. You said we must also define soft. Does soft mean having everything one wants in the world at their feet, but a husband who is a piece of crap, but he has money? So yeah, we're gonna get into that because that soft and that soft life is going to mean different things for different people, and in my opinion, because and yeah, we're gonna get there. I'm not gonna go to that yet, but yeah, we are going to get there. Let's see. I just want to make sure. Okay, just want to make sure there wasn't any other comments there. Okay, so let's talk about what is said about the soft life. So, Hanifa, you made two different distinctions when it comes to soft life. So, what soft life is portrayed, the image that we see in social media, and then what we might believe the soft life to be.
Mhm.
So, one thing that I took down, I was looking at some things and I saw that there were some people, and let me give a definition first. I forgot about the definition. So, what is the soft life movement? It is a rejection. So, this is just a basic definition, a rejection of the struggle, stress, and anxiety that come with working a traditional 9 to 5 career and spinning away your days on life's hamster wheel. So then in the Urban Dictionary, a little different. It said the soft life is a life of ease without requiring hard work, sacrifice, and unpleasantness. So when you just hear those definitions, it kind of you kind of have mixed feelings about those definitions. Like when I hear those definitions, I have mixed feelings about them. So it's kind of like, okay, I do understand because I'm very much so on kind of like doing away with the traditional nine to five, which that was a part of capitalism anyway. The whole 5 day work week, working 8 hours a day. Those are all things. Those were all tools. Those are things that were made because of production. So we wanted production. Well, there were people who wanted things to be produced in a certain way. So also then there came laws where you couldn't work people just all day long, like they were working people. There came child labor laws, all those different kind of things. So the things that we have now is not necessarily what is natural to us either.
Mhm.
So, I am about creating your life, creating your
Mhm.
reality, enjoying what you do. But then when I hear kind of like without requiring hard work, sacrifice, and unpleasantness, it kind of makes me wonder, what people, because for me, hard work does not necessarily equate to struggle.
Mhm.
And then like sacrifice, I think that we all have a certain forms of sacrifice for anything. I think anything requires a certain level of sacrifice to get what's good on the other side of that. So when you have children, you do have a certain level of sacrifice. If you're married, you have most likely sacrificed. If you had even if you have like a really good paying job, that
Mhm.
comes with sacrifice.
Mhm.
So a lot of things come with sacrifice. And then if you want the soft life that I imagine, if I want that type of life, that also comes with sacrifice. So if I say I want to be my own boss, that's going to come with sacrifice, because let's say you're making 6 figures and then you decide that I want to stay home with my children. That might require a certain level of sacrifice.
Mhm.
So when I hear that, or even the word unpleasantness, right? That you know, there are times I love my children, but there's times when they're unpleasant, right?
Mhm.
So when people use certain words, to describe like the quote unquote soft life and things like that, it's kind of like, well, what is it that you are really
Mhm.
asking for? So there's one thing that I was looking at, and it said the main thing, like across almost every person that I listen to talk about the soft life, it said no more struggle love, right? So rejecting struggle love is one of the things that we talk about. So again, struggle and hard work are, kind of um sometimes we're using those like they're synonyms for one another. And I think that one can encompass the other, but just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're putting hard work, and just because you have hard work doesn't mean that like you're struggling. So there are some things there that we are kind of making it to be synonymous. So the whole idea of struggle love. So when you hear struggle love, we talked about this before, but when you hear that word like struggle love, what is struggle love to you?
Struggle love, within social media spaces, it's a very biased perception of very biased and very gender specific perception of relationships
Mm,
and the ebbs and flow of relationships. It's a very biased, gender specific one. And what I
mm-hmm.
mean by that is when men help us to acquire certain statuses in life, to pursue our dreams, to wait us out, right? Until we decide what we really want to do, right? Because a lot of us as women, we're indecisive, right?
Right.
While he supports you in all your dreams, it is not ever seen as struggle love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Struggle love only enters the equation when a man might be down on his luck, which a
Mm.
man is allowed to have that moment as a human
Right.
being.
Right.
A man can hit hard times just like women. It doesn't make him less of a man. Okay? But that also goes back to if you aren't producing capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
then you are worthless, right?
Right.
And so when we talk about struggle love, it is always in reference to a woman helping a man in any capacity.
Right.
And
Right.
then we can become very, if we want to really go in, it becomes very specific
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to race,
Right.
whether we want to accept it or not. There's this whole influx, or this whole movement around struggle love as it pertains to black couples,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a narrative being pushed that all black men are down on their luck and
Mm-hmm.
struggling and uneducated and
Right.
unproductive and deadbeat fathers and poor mates, right? And terrible husbands and don't want to be married, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
assumption when you see a woman, a black woman, says, okay, my husband is having a difficult time. I am going to step up in the time, in the time in between for our household until he figures it out. You do not know the history of that couple. You do not know what that man has done for that woman, for her to even take that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
All you know is that this is a black man, right? Being cared for by a
Mm-hmm.
black woman. And that right there speaks to whatever narrative or whatever beliefs systems you already have within your own psyche around black men. So there's a racial undertone, and I've told you this before, that is attached to struggle love. And struggle love is a very biased and very gender specific title. It is only given when men are down on their luck, or men hit a bump in the road, or men maybe lose their job, because these things happen. Men
Right.
are not exempt from these realities because they're men, because they have penises. Your husband can lose his job tomorrow.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that men are machines, men are utilities, men must always produce, and men must always, that's a societal issue in itself, right? That's very much rooted in white patriarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about struggle love, that is what I see. What that evokes in me is that, because every time we're discussing struggle love, pay attention to it. Pay attention to it. It's never when Bob and Tom is down on their luck and their wives are like, yeah, I set my husband up with an LLC. We don't have those struggle love conversations
Right.
around that. Struggle
Right.
love is very specific to a certain group of people and a certain gender.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And and that is I was looking at a video. I'm trying to decide, um I might show it, but when it comes to the whole idea, she was, in the video talking about, struggle love, it's like you said, it's those racial undertones. And we have equated like the whole idea of struggle of in our relationships, and even when I think about that, I think I'm gonna show this video really quickly because let's see, it was something that she said in it, and I just want to put let's see here, y'all. Okay, and there's my disclaimer there. Fair use, fair use. All right, one moment while I show this. I'm just gonna show like a minute of it. Share screen here. Okay, so she's in this video, she's actually talking about how to live a soft life. And you can see kind of like on the video, she's kind of, trying to depict what a soft life looks like as well. So
Mm-hmm.
let's take, oh yeah, let's take a look at that. Uh-oh. All right, and she's kind of talking about struggle love at this point.
Okay.
Oh goodness. Let me back up y'all a little bit. Okay.
Okay? And struggle love is a love that is struggle. It's hard. It's arguments, it's fights, it's cheating, it's lying, it's stealing, it is negativity, it's toxicity, all of those things that should not be associated with love. You have to cut that out, okay? When it's right, it is light, okay? We want.
Okay. So as you can, hear right there, like when she's talking about struggle love, she's talking about it as that that's what it is. So mind you, we have to be careful that we're not talking about that we need to stay in something that is toxic
Mm-hmm.
or stay in abusive relationships or somebody is continuously cheating on you and things like that. But now we've equated struggle love with just the man falling on hard times, like if that's struggle love. And because it's gotten so easy, and in these quote unquote gender war conversations, men do talk about women leaving, right? Like they're the ones who filed for divorce more than men do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about that and the reasons why and all the different, different kind of stuff, because I don't think that it just happens, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's usually over money.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot of different layers to that. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I do notice when we have these struggle love conversations, like you said, it's one sided, but also it also shows up when we're talking about our relationships, and we have equated our relationships with kind of those like toxicity, like there's some toxic things within our relationship that we continuously say. So again, that's why even the word struggle, I have an issue with the word struggle,
Mm-hmm.
because relationships do take hard work. Like they
Mm-hmm.
take work, they take effort,
Mm-hmm.
but because we're able to leave them or we don't want to go through things, what is one of the things that, is in these modern versus traditional women conversations? The women like to say, "Oh, well, I'm not doing what my grandma, my great grandmama did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not staying in these relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and they were being abused or cheated on and things like that." We're like, we're not doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is we act like, and on both sides, when you hear men and women talk about those conversations, both sides are kind of using extremes, and we're not really having the real conversation as to why those relationships last and how we can take the good and
Mm-hmm.
away the bad. We're not taking the good and saying, okay, well, they did stay together for longer, but how do we not repeat some of those negative things, those bad habits, when it comes to that? I do want to shout out some people who came through. um Let's see. Um, oh, peace to you, Talawa. It's good to see you here. Yes, you don't have to go to Aruba or Dubai to enjoy life. And the water bearing attune asked the question, I need to know how this soft life benefits us as a whole. And that's a good question, because I always say this in these conversations. When it comes to whatever we are participating in, how does it benefit you, your family, and your community? So it always has to be this kind of theme, and this is what this channel is about. It has to be about this theme about how are we uplifting our own community? Because, and that kind of leads me to like my next point. Uh it wasn't really my next point, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. But when we talk about, there's a point where I think Black women have often been seen as the quote unquote, we talked about this saviors of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the fact that they, as a woman, you're a nurturer. So
Mm-hmm.
then we were nurturing other people's kids, while also trying in a sense to nurture our own in a
Mm-hmm.
way. But also we've always been deemed as the women who were doing things for other people. So now
Mm-hmm.
we're at a point where are we, and I guess I'll just pose this question, and people, you could anyone who's wants to answer in the chat, but are we now trying to depict another culture, a European culture, because they were the ones with the luxuries. They were the ones not raising their own children. They were the ones, actually having a life of ease, less struggle. So when it comes to that, is it now like, oh, it's our turn? Because if we think about this and we think about how we've been planted in this society for so long, after a while, if you go and you live, if a person goes live with a gorilla for so long, after a while, they're going to want to be a gorilla, and so it's kind of like that same idea. After a while, you're going to want to be who you deem as the dominant group in that society. And what does that look like to you? What does it look like to now want to be like that other group, that and who you deem as the dominant society? So what do you think about that?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna go back a little bit. So here's one thing I do want to say. I think it's unfair to compare
Okay.
our generation to the generation of our grandfathers, grandmother, great grands. I think it's unfair. They were living in a completely different time,
Mm-hmm.
and you would be surprised what you would do under certain conditions. That's
Right.
one. So
Right.
there's no need to compare. I agree with you. I think that we can draw from
Mm-hmm.
without the need to compare. We could draw from and evolve that which we found good. We could
Mm-hmm.
build upon that which we found good and do and leave the rest right there in the past. Do you get
Right.
what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think there's that. And that's one. I think I lost my train of thought for the second part. But I do see a lot of that happening. We live in different times,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, sorry. What I wanted to speak to is that there is levels to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Struggle doesn't have one definition. It doesn't have one experience. It doesn't have one face, right? It's many different things. Okay. Some people would go to I don't know, maybe parts of Africa where electricity is not running through the village. Okay. The people who have acclimated to that society, that's their life.
Right.
That's how they live. You go and you do this. This is how they live. Somebody coming from a Western, like America, for example, where you just hit the light switch, you don't even plant your own food.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start there. You don't even plant your own food. You go to the supermarket and you buy your food, whereby somebody has to plant. They have to harvest in certain countries. That's how they eat, right? I'm
Right.
talking about in small. Okay. So for you, you look at that life as a struggle, right? Because you're used to the life where everything is given to you, everything is convenient.
Mhm.
Here's the other thing: struggle. There are people who live lives of ease and luxury that
Mhm.
have a different type of struggle. These are the women that have to look the other way when their wealthy husbands are cheating on them. When
Mhm.
their wealthy husband have whole mistresses for the same
Right.
length of time that they've been married to them.
Mhm.
You been his wife 15 years and she been his mistress 15 years. He's paid that the apartment she lives in, that condo she lives in, is paid for by your husband because
Mhm.
he has the money to do so. And there's a lot of people in this space that has that talking point. Well, when you have money, you have options and you can do that if you want simply because of your money, right? So
Right.
in other words, we can be toxic and disgusting and disrespectful as long as you have money to do so. I wonder where that comes from.
Right.
Okay? So when we talk about struggle, struggle looks different. It's not that like you can have money and still have struggle. We have to detach the idea and the definition of struggle from
Mhm.
material things.
Mhm.
It's just a different kind of struggle. You have people who have money. Like you have women right now who are married, who have money. They are miserable. They are depressed. They are on anxiety medications. They're having suicidal thoughts.
Mhm.
Their spiritual health, their mental health, their physical health is jacked, but they have money,
Right.
right? Okay, or the woman who, and let's be clear, a lot of these celebrity women who have this, and I'm going to speak to that eventually too. These women who may have married into the money, right, and all they do is shop, right, and get on TV shows and get captured by the paparazzi for
Mhm.
to appear in magazines. These women have a different kind of struggle oftentimes. Some of them are very lonely,
Mhm.
right? Yes, they can buy almost anything they want, but they're lonely, they're sad, and they're trapped in their relationships because
Right.
they don't really have a voice in the relationship because they are not the breadwinners of
Mhm.
those relationships. The man calls all the shot. And if he's a toxic man, right? What do you think happens to that woman? So all you get to see is camera shots
Mhm.
of them buying the latest bag and the latest shoes, and you're captivated by that
Right.
and you do not know their full story. Some of them are on drugs. We see that eventually. We talk about celebrities.
Mhm.
Okay, some of them have been in rehab more times than you can count, and you just don't know that because it hasn't made the tabloids.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
these are people who you look up to for a soft life. So we have to remove the idea of struggle from materialism. There are people who don't have a lot material, that don't have a lot as far as money, but they are happy,
Right.
right? They're not necessarily struggling.
Yeah.
And then
Mm.
there are people who have the money, right? Who have a different kind of struggle. So I
Mhm.
think I'm with him. Like, I'm with you. Like, how are we defining struggle here, right?
Right.
Whose metric are we using,
Mhm.
right? We have to contextualize this at this point because what are the images? And the last thing I'm going to say, my ad, when you Google soft life,
Mhm.
look at the color scheme.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at the color pattern,
Mhm.
right? There's some symbology there as well, right? You see a lot of pinks and whites,
Mhm.
right? Which it communicates softness, innocence, childlikeness, right? Purity.
Mhm.
Okay, so for me, I feel like even after I was looking it up, the soft life conversation is the same femininity conversation that people have been trying to have online
Yeah.
for the last 2 years. It just has a different face.
Right.
It really does. Because when you look at the color scheme behind of the soft life, when you Google that and you have a picture of what's going on and you see the symbology, you're like, wait, they're talking about femininity from a different angle,
Yep.
right? Right. And this is and so these women now, it's almost like the femininity conversation, some of these women, the femininity conversation bothered them. It was too much in their face, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in order to confront it, they decide to take the back door, which is soft life. It's the same conversation. It's
Yep.
the same conversation. But to water bearing, if it's rooted in consumerism, right, and being materialistic, right, and being exploitative, right, in participating fully in this capitalistic, which is an exploitative system, then no, it doesn't benefit the whole. It actually harms the whole.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. If it leads back to that, because even when
if
you
it leads back to that, yes.
yeah, like even when you talk about what the soft life is is showing as a whole. Like if you go to social media, you go to Instagram and you put in a soft life, there are pictures, just like you Google, right? The soft life, there are certain images that you are presented with. It's this life of luxury, it's and like I said, this conversation is you can have it on many different levels. There are it you go to different videos of soft life, you live it, everybody has a different take on it. But at the end of the day, some of those themes are there. So it's one, no struggle love. And again, whose idea of struggling, and then why are we equating um certain aspects of just working hard in your relationship as struggle love? Because when we talk about struggle love now, we're talking about it in a way that is just it's just like, don't stay around, don't stick for that. There was, a video I watched. She said, if you see that, those red flags are there, you don't stick around. I think there are some definite red flags that you should look out for. But at the same time, there are times in a relationship, if you know anyone who's been married or in a relationship for a really good number of years, there are going to be ups and downs in that relationship. You cannot say, okay, well, this person is down now, so that's struggle love. So now I'm out because I'm not able to what? What is the other thing you just mentioned? It. I am not able to embrace my femininity because now we're in a place where we're struggling. We're struggling, and so now I can't. What's the words that they like to use? Rest in my femininity. So femininity is equated to softness now. So they're, instead of saying soft, we're was it saying femininity or being feminine, now we're using the word soft. And so
Right.
mostly all of the verbiage that is being used around softness is saying, hey, you want to be able to embrace your femininity. So you cannot embrace your femininity if you're struggling, or you're in a struggle love situation, or if you have to work too hard. Now, I do believe that in some instances, because you want to be able to, you know, to be able to and you want to be able to interact with both sides of you, for one. You want healthy expressions of femininity, healthy expressions of masculinity within yourself. But then we're kind of like, oh no, you're not supposed to even be dealing with masculinity at all. All you have to do is embrace your femininity. And that's an issue too, because we know that, if you've been a loyal on this channel, that's what we talk about, the
But
balance.
this goes back to you guys are you're demanding something from women who you have not built the structure to protect.
Mm,
Because femininity, you talk about softness and femininity and what that really looks like and what the feminine shows up as.
mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
have you built? What structures have you put in place to protect that femininity? So now you guys are demanding, right? That 80% of single women, single mothers who are solely providing for their children, you are asking them to do something that is very dangerous. Do you understand what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
when I say that, when I say dangerous, I'm saying when you rest in your femininity, I'm going to give myself as an example. Okay. If somebody was to say the soft life, right? I could say right now in my life, I would probably fall in that category.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I have a husband that provides that life.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying? If I was a single mother, that would not be my reality. I would have to go out there. I will have to hustle just like everybody else to make ends meet. Okay? So you guys they're talking to single women and being frustrated with single women, right? They rather argue with single women who have to show up like that as a means to survive. That's one. They're requesting that of single women. I would say it makes more sense to be about building
Mm-hmm.
the security, the safe space, the social structures. I would say be about putting that in place before you start making demands.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because here's the thing, you can marry them. And if you are still dependent on their income, they're not resting in their femininity because they still got to go out there and hustle with you.
Right.
This is the part of the conversation that a lot of the men are not getting. You have to build it. You have to build it. You can't just tell a woman or just rest in your femininity. How is these mouths being fed?
Right.
Because now I gotta go in corporate America and I gotta damn near bump shoulders with grown behind hairy men. You get what I'm saying? Especially if I trying to make more money. I gotta stand up for myself. I gotta go to these jobs. I gotta work. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta come home. I have to work. I have to take care of my children. I gotta help with homework. I gotta make sure that they're fed, they're clothed. You know what I'm saying? I gotta read bedtime stories, right? There is no masculine there,
Right.
to allow me to rest in my femininity. And then we need to stop isolating the two.
Mm-hmm.
The two cannot be separate. And this is where the toxicity is coming in because you guys, they're trying to alienate the two from itself, masculine and then feminine, right? The
Right.
feminine shows up in her best self when the masculine is present.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
masculine shows up in his best self when the feminine is present. Separate from each other, they're always going to show up in an imbalanced, toxic way.
Exactly.
We need to
Exactly.
start having conversations around balance,
Mm-hmm.
around a complementary,
Mm-hmm.
not competition. And I think that's a big part of it, Maat, that it's the conversations are just too separatist for me,
Right.
right? And so and once you separate stuff and you put it before people, people then feel they have to choose a side, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to know better to enter into those conversations, right? Where you know the only thing that's going to move us forward is if these two things work together, not compete, but work, but complement
Mm-hmm.
and work together. But you cannot demand women, these single women, to rest in their femininity, and you have not built the structures necessary for them to do so. And that includes the family structure.
Mm.
That's
Yep.
it.
Yep. Yep. Greetings, Taisha. Peace to you. Thank you for coming through, sis. And I see Nizayan has come through as well. Now he
Mm-hmm.
said you can't make a woman who doesn't want to cooperate no matter what you do or build.
I
And
agree.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about specific, we have to be specific about who we're talking about as well.
Yeah.
When we talk about even about men in the community building institutions, we're talking about specific men. Like we're not talking about, you know, we're not talking about I'm not, I'll leave it there. But we're talking
Yeah.
about specific men who are their mindset is about building not only for the community but for the next generation.
You're talking about men who are serious about community building.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't enjoy, or I don't look to have conversations, one, with people who are not in our community, but people who are running away from the community, right? AKA divestors. I don't I don't want to have those conversations because you're not wanting to build within the community. So what's the point in having the conversation?
Hmm.
If you're going to be constantly fight, it's if you're going to be constantly fighting with someone to stay in the community and build within the community, and they don't see any value. And that's the other thing that we have to talk about. We have to talk about the value piece. Like, what do we see as valuable? So there are people in the community
Mm-hmm.
that they just don't see us, they don't see black women as valuable, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
we have less value than the men because men have strength, right? So they look at that. And then there are women as well. And the question I ask, and peace to Amawale, peace, brother. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate you. And the thing is also within that, the question that I have to ask is, if a soft life, if black women can achieve soft life, right? Or that's their aim.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about black men, right? So, what is it about black men? Because we got to understand there's also financial abuse, right? There's financial manipulation. So, if I'm going to achieve a soft life, does that mean that my husband has to go out there and work 3 or 4 jobs? Because the society is not, we're talking about capitalism. It's not built fair. It's not built balanced. Somebody has to be at the bottom. So if I'm going to achieve soft life, and that's where the privilege piece comes in, because I don't necessarily have to go and deal with what we call was it racial battle fatigue, right? I don't have to go
Mm-hmm.
and deal with that. My husband has to go and deal with that. I can kind of stay at home with the kids. I do, I work, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I can kind of create more of my reality, and that is a privilege. So
Mm-hmm.
in essence, I have more of what I consider more of a soft life. But then what does that mean if we're looking at numbers? What do the numbers look like? Because if I say, well, I want to live in this certain neighborhood, be around these certain people, buy this type of house and these type of cars, but then on top of that, I want a soft life. So the man that I'm with, he does not get to participate really in that soft life, in essence, because that soft life is just about me. And so that goes back to what? It goes back to capitalism. It goes back to individualism, because most people who buy into capitalism have to buy into individualism. And then the soft life is more of an individualistic mindset that a lot of Black women have bought into.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it. Like I think you had looked up the Urban Dictionary's definition of
Mhm.
soft life. And one of okay, so living a life of comfort, in a nutshell, of comfort and low stress. This soft life movement is even one of entitlement because it speaks to the way that we think about men. And since we're black, we're talking about black men. They are not deserving of peace. I tell you, a lot of this stuff is very gender specific, it's very separatist, it's very individualistic, right? So we got to be careful about that, especially as black women who, what we partake in, especially as black women who are for black women partnering and being coupled with black men. Those of us who are partnered and coupled with black men, who are married to black men, we got to be very careful of these movements that we jump on because they just look good and they feel good. But what is the agenda? What is really being pushed? Right? What is not being said? What is not being said? And so when you talk about stress, okay, and the high rate of suicide amongst Black men, and it's increasing, right? You talk about a soft life. Soft life is very gender specific. You ain't see no pictures of no man in no pink and no white unless he's not a heterosexual cis or whatever they call them. I don't know what they cisgendered heterosexual man. Okay? Unless he's identifying as something else. So we gotta be very careful the bandwagons we jump on as Black women. It's important. We got to be investigative in a sense of everything that comes out of this system of racism, white supremacy. We have to be, because we end up joining and participating in things that are towards our own demise and that of the Black family, right? You start listening to a lot of this stuff, you start looking at your husband sideways, your Black husband sideways. Well, why don't you do this? And why? But whose blueprint are you following? When we say this is what a man is, whose definition are we using? When we say this is what a woman is, whose definition are we using? You get what I'm saying? We got to be careful with that as well. But when it comes to like the soft life, like this thing that they're pushing is all rooted in consumerism and capitalism. The idea, I think Umawale put something in the comments, and I want to speak to that as well. He says Miss Anne's soft life was born on the back of, okay, I keep saying this. You guys want the life of the white woman on the rocking chair in the big house on the plantation.
Oh, right. Right. Mm-hmm.
That's your blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want. That's what you consider soft. That's what you, not everyone, because like I just told you what soft life means to me. Okay. But when you guys, this is the blueprint, but you have to understand, in order for her to have that life, it required that your ancestors be enslaved. It requires exploitation. It requires someone stay at the bottom with somebody's foot on their neck.
Right.
So be careful what you are asking for, right? And that's why I say a lot of us are not about dismantling. We just want fair treatment within the exploitative system.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to dismantle. We want to participate. We want to reap the benefits of without the discrimination that comes with it. We just want you to stop discriminating. We don't care. Keep your system, because in fact, we want to benefit from it. This is the mindset of a lot of us, not just our men, our women too.
Right.
Our women too. This is why you have the divestors, access. Somebody talked about the soft life, how they perceive the soft life. For them, they perceive the soft life as access and proximity to whiteness.
Right.
That's what softness is to them. If I can get a white man, then I can live a stress-free life.
Right.
I don't have to worry anymore. I don't have to struggle. That's the struggle of. We got to be so careful with that stuff. And a lot of us as women, as Black women, I don't know if it's the emotional part of us, Ma'at, or that we're not studied, or I don't know what it is. I think it might be a combination of two, but where people could just play on our emotions, we end up jumping head into stuff. And then it becomes we don't even understand that, no, that's a them thing, right? But we jump in and say, no, it's a we thing. It's the idea that, oh, white women are having issues with their men, so therefore we are having an issue with our men.
Right.
Right? Oh, they want equality. Oh, that means that we should want equality too. Right? Oh, wait. Oh, they have these pictures of that means that I should have access. Where are you taking your cues from? Because you cannot take your cues from your oppressor and still at the same time seek to fight your oppressor.
Right.
It's impossible to do. Just the same thing I said, a lot of us are having issues around dismantling certain systems because it is our bread and butter.
Right.
You cannot convince me to dismantle something that's feeding me. Because now, my ad, when you're talking about dismantling, you're asking me to give up my livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, our imagination is enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
We can't imagine a life outside of whiteness. You hear conversation. Well, if the white man go, you're not gonna have YouTube. You're not gonna have. You start listing all these things.
Right.
Your life is just gonna be primitive. There go that word again, my aunt. Primitive. You
Mm-hmm.
guys are asking us to go back to primitive living. That lets me know that your mind, it's not just your mind, your dream world, your imagination, your creative realm, all of those things are colonized because you cannot even imagine a life outside of whiteness. That lets me know everything I need to know.
Because even when we start talking about separation, right? When you start talking about separation, it's like, we're going to be destitute. We're going to be living, even when you talk about off, and you've said this before about off grid living, right? Like, we don't use that when we talk about the white man living off grid. We don't use the word primitive. They don't think of it the same way, but and it goes back to that, you've spoken about it on your channel, poor racial esteem, because we don't believe that our race of people, our group, our collective blackness can that has scientists, engineers, you know what I'm saying? We don't believe that we have all these people to come together, architects, builders. We don't believe that we can come together and actually create something that is not even it doesn't it's not going to even be better, that but even comes close to being anything that we have seen come from whiteness, because we don't even understand, we don't understand history, we don't understand where a lot of the technology came from in the first place. It's we talk about progress in a way, and that's the thing with even talking about progress. You can only talk about progress, you only think that you've progressed, you only think that the first black president is progress if you don't know history. And so
Mm,
it's
mm,
it's one of those things that we end up continuing to do one another, right? It's like, "Ugh, I don't want to be with you, I'm not about to be off grid with you, living, not having access to Wi-Fi, I want to be." And then it's that proximity, you want to be close to whiteness. And this is one of those things. What are we depicting by saying that we want a soft life? We are depicting, just like you said, just like Amawale said, we're depicting that life. We want to depict that life on the plantation. We want to depict, we are tired of taking, quote unquote, now, taking care of the community. Now it's time for us, someone to take care of us. And then
mm,
we
mhm,
can't
mhm,
dismiss the fact that within some of our religious paradigms too, there's also that underlying theme that, okay, if I'm going to be submissive to a man,
mhm,
he has to take care of me and I don't have to do anything. Like, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to work
mhm,
hard, I'm
mhm,
willing to submit to you as long as you're keeping your end of the bargain, which means I don't have to do any of those things. And
mhm,
so then what do? It's this exchange
mhm,
where I've heard women actually say, well, as long as he's, taking care of this, bringing home the bacon, whatever it is, I'll deal with it, because I don't believe black men are faithful anyway. They're not gonna.
mhm,
You
mhm,
just gotta pick the best one who's gonna take care of you.
mhm.
So that is what we're dealing with. I'm gonna go to the comments. Peace to you.
When you finish, I have something to add to what you said. Go ahead.
Okay, Jabril, peace to you. Thank you for coming through. Now, Nova Rain is saying that the collectivist Chinese seem to be playing the game of capitalism just fine. Well, playing the game of capitalism, and that's the thing. If you want to play the game of capitalism, you have every right to go ahead and do that. But at the end of the day, there are still people at the bottom. So what part of the Chinese are you talking about? You're talking about the ones that are well off,
I
or are
think he's talking about the ones that are in America.
oh, okay, okay. I
Mhm,
see. I see what you're saying. But then also, what do they have? They do have. they still have that, that country, and there's a mindset. So yeah, there are people who come over here who do play
Country and culture.
country and culture, right? Right. And so, we do that, and that happened during the last conversation, right? And we end up going to these other cultures of people and talking about the other cultures of people.
Because I think there's a level of dismissiveness as it
Mhm.
pertains to Black Americans or Black people in America. I think that there is this it's like we don't really understand how important nation, like having a nation, having culture, it's like we don't really understand that, right? But I think a part of it is that a lot of Black Americans see themselves as just American, right? That's what we see, that movement happening right now. I'm just American, right? But you are hmm, when the China man says I'm Chinese, it is because China claims them.
Mhm.
When the Chinese woman say I am Chinese, it is because
Right.
China claims them.
That's true. Mhm.
Okay? When a Black American says I'm America, is America backing them?
Mhm.
Do
That's
you get
true.
what I'm saying? I'm American. What is American culture? Because what is Western culture? What is that? Because when you really peel it back, all you're gonna find is whiteness. And is
Mm.
that really your culture?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So when we bring up other cultures, we really have to take into perspective or take into consideration that these people have a foundation, right? That a lot of Black Americans do not have.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. And I wanted to say to what you talked about with primitive. And you
Mhm.
and I talked about this on the phone. And yeah, it's a fact. When people use the word primitive, that has a racial undertone to it as well.
Huh?
Because when you look at these white people who is pushing minimalism, writing whole books on
Mhm.
minimalism, off-grid living, planting your own food, okay, living off-grid.
Mhm.
No one calls them primitive.
Right.
No one. But you will go over to a village in Africa and they're living out of their off. They have off-grid living
Mhm.
technically, they're growing their own food. They're hunting for their own food, and they get the label of primitive. You really have to see. You have to get down to why certain pictures come to your mind when certain words are spoken,
Right.
right? And then when we talk about technology and advanced technology, I told you about this behind the scenes. Um, when I read of the water and of the spirit
Mhm.
by Maladoma, right? So Burkina Faso. This man talks about his people having access to portals, time traveling, and you have access to these things through initiation, right? So, this idea that when it comes to technological advancement, for goodness sake, there are literally Black people right now who do not realize that they think that people were able to travel the world only when white people built boats.
Right.
And yet, Van Sertima talks about that and say there were Black Africans traveling the globe
Mhm.
before there was ever a Christopher Columbus. What were they? Were they swimming?
Right.
What were they swimming? What were they in? Water tubes? What were they? How were they traveling? Boats, boats.
Mhm.
But when you don't know that history, I'm talking about the history that was there before there was even such a thing as chattel slavery in America.
Mhm.
When you don't understand that your ancestors was had advanced technology, accessing it,
Mhm.
using it, we're behind.
Yeah.
We're behind. And I keep saying that when you start to study and you see these things, my app, you're like, you're no longer impressed with the iPhone. You're no longer impressed with the newest iPhone on the market. No. I want to be able to go and tap into certain realms that my ancestors had access to. I
Exactly.
want to be able to have access to those portals within myself. That's
Mhm.
the advanced technology that I'm impressed by. I want to be able to time travel so that I could bring something back for our people. But you all are impressed over iPhones?
Mhm.
Y'all are impressed only by what's made by the white man's hand, and your people were accessing talk about advanced technology way before these people even came out of where they came from? Are you kidding me right now? Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. My apologies.
No, you're good. You're good. Design, so that's why I don't ask for a woman to be submissive, because that comes from the white man's values. Um, exactly. Iyapo, the only freedom our people can achieve can only happen separated from their system. There's no fixing, no adjusting, fit, no retrofitting it. Separating from it is the only answer. I agree with that. I definitely agree. It's not, we're the, me and Hanifa talk about all the time, like we're the minority. So it's one of those things where you just have to, like, when you understand it, you just prepare for it, because a lot of people will gaslight you, right? And these conversations, they'll say, well, you're here, you're still participating, right? And then it's one of those things where you have to understand, like, you don't know what's going down, because what are we doing? We're not on social media talking about the things that we're doing. There are a lot of people who are participating, and in grassroots movements and all of those different kind of things. Are we sitting up here telling our every move on social media? No, you just work behind the scenes and do those things, even if it takes years. The work that it needs to be done, because why? We care about the future generations. That's it. Like, and that's the individualism, because if you only care about today, if you only care about the food that's going in your mouth right now, and you don't care that your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren are going to be able to eat, you have successfully bought into individualism and capitalism. And that's the thing that we have to get to, because the whole idea of the soft life, because even when I think about that, there are some things that I do not want my our children to have to deal with, to have to struggle with, right? So I might say, you know what, I might not be able to achieve the quote unquote soft life, but maybe my children, the next generation. And then we'll talk about what soft life even means, what I think soft life means, because it's totally different. Because i'm not a I'm not a material person. I just need my necessities, and that's about it. But at the same time, I don't look at certain things or certain ideas as necessities. Because even when you talk about what Hanifa was just saying about, like, technology, right? Like, what are we doing? Why do we get so excited about these certain types of technologies and cell phones and things like that, or even living in a certain place? A lot of us just want this quote unquote soft life, so we can live next to, how we used to say, people used to say, you're trying to live up to the Joneses. Now we're trying to be the Joneses, right? Like, that's what we're trying to be, because now we want to live next door to the quote unquote what we consider the whole idea of whiteness, right? So the thing is it's a point of, when do we look at, just because separation, and what does that even mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, that is also what we have to look at. When Dr. Marimba Ani, she talks about that. She talks about separating, and we think separation means living side by side within their system. But that is not even true separation. And we have to understand, and that's a whole nother conversation. Next week, we're going to have a conversation about systems and things like that. But that's a whole different conversation, because what does a true revolution look like? What does true separation look like? Like, what does freedom for us actually look like? And how are we going to be okay? Because maybe it will look a little primitive. right now, right? Maybe
Mhm.
it will. But eventually it's going to look, if you're growing your own food, that looks different than when you've been growing your food for years or you have a whole farm. That looks different in the beginning.
It,
So,
you have to have a problem with the way things are first.
yeah.
There has to be like a discomfort. There has to
Mhm.
be like, a disgust in
Mhm.
a sense with the way that things are right now.
Right.
Or you have to be unpleased with
Mhm.
the position of your people. If you don't have that displeasure, then all you are going to do is be fawning over these discriminatory diabolical systems that are in place, right? And where your people always end up at the bottom. There must be a displeasure there in order for you to do something about it. You
Mhm.
have to. If that's not there, then you're going to find excuses to
Right.
not unplug. You're going to find excuses to not tackle, to not dismantle, to not have conversation against,
Mhm.
right? About. You're going to see conversations about it as whining and complaining, right? That's what's happening.
Mm.
Even when you talk about the high value hypergamy conversations, I think you and I were struggling with that
Yeah.
because most people that know me know that I love the whole tiny house movement, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Love it. Okay. My husband is 6'6". He ain't with it. Okay. Unless the tiny house has high ceilings. The
Mhm.
brother ain't having it. Okay. But I am attracted to that.
Yeah.
Right. So when you talk to me and you talk to me about hypergamy, I process that differently
Mhm.
because I don't show up like that. I
Right.
don't I don't go after the man with the fattest pockets,
Mhm.
right? I go after the man who has a love for his people. I go after the man who is intellectual, semi-nerdish. Those are at the top of my list
Mhm.
because I know that if he's a thinking man and he's innovative and he's creative, that we will never lack.
Right.
That goes without saying.
Right.
But when the hypergamous conversation comes up, I can't relate.
Mhm.
I can't relate, and it's very difficult for me, and I had to accept that. So I said I will no longer give my opinion on the hypergamy topic because I cannot relate to it because
Right.
my wiring is not like that, and I know a lot of black women whose wiring aren't like that. You
Mhm.
get what I'm saying? But our men want to have the conversation and lock us in to I don't even know where we're getting these studies from. This is how women are.
Right.
Which woman? I study psychology, right? You have to kind of know who these people were studying when they talk about child development. And Dr. Amos Wilson writes about this. What's his name? Konjufu. Dr. Konjufu wrote about this and talk about the fast paced development of black children. But
Mhm.
when you go in the psychology book does not differentiate. The psychology book says this is when all children hit these developmental milestone, right? So if you lump your black children in with all children, or
Mhm.
who these studies are really referring to, then you start to think that, oh, well, I'm not going to introduce this to them yet because developmentally they're not ready for that.
Mhm.
Where are we? Whose framework, whose blueprint, whose template are we following? That's what we have to talk about. And this is for everything,
Right.
every single thing. So, this soft life, when you look it up and you Google it and the pictures that come up, look at the pictures closely. Look at the symbology. Look at the colors being used.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying? It's almost like a very childlike
Mhm.
um, approach, right, to softness. Just pay attention to that. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the comments here. So Iapo said all abusers convince the abused person or person that they can't make it without them, the abuser, and that they are ugly, worthless, useless. Yeah, so that goes back to the Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, the functional inferiority, right? So we have to feel, in order to continue to function in this system, we have to believe that each other are inferior. We have to, and this goes into even this whole movement when divesting. So, I talked about this before. The whole idea, like the black woman has to believe that the black man is inferior. The black man has to believe that the black woman is inferior. So if you think that one is inferior, then you think something or someone else is superior. So that's what you're gonna go to. I know Brother Talawah brought it up. He said someone, I think he said someone in his family actually ended up being, going to a white man because of the whole idea of I won't have to struggle. So you identify struggling with that black man or that black woman, that person, just because of their color, their skin color. You had to buy into the fact that they are inferior because of their blackness. And so who are you thinking like? Who are you functioning like? You're thinking like that white man that I have been telling you to kill inside of you. So that is what you have to, that's what you're actually walking around like. Because what does that do? What does that functional inferiority do? It actually advances the quote unquote white dominant society. That's what it does. So, we'll talk about systems next week, but that is what, when you participate in their educational system, when you participate in capitalism. Now, we're all participating in some system, because a lot of us want to have the conversation and say, well, just because well, you're on YouTube right now, so you're participating in a system. Yes, but I also know that there are certain programs that I have turned away from, that I have decided not to participate anymore. But like um elder Baba Kaba, he said, we're all cooning at some level, right? So that's the thing. We have to understand, I can actually say yes, that there are some things that I am participating in, but acknowledging that, knowing that, and then saying that I want to change that, because we no longer want to participate in these systems. So then we have to actively do the work so that we are no longer participating. It's just like, if you know that you were eating something toxic for a long time, after a while you say, okay, this thing is toxic. I no longer want to eat it. So what do I have to do in order to no longer participate in putting those toxic things in my body? And that and so I'm going to go to the next comment. So yes, learning to name ourselves and redefine our existence, collective mindset, has to drive our actions. I agree with that. And because the whole idea of even redefining, you know there there's a lot of words that go around redefining femininity, redefining manhood. We're redefining all of the all of these things. And again, what do they serve? What purpose do they serve when we are redefining them? You know, um,
I think that black people as a whole, it's not even necessarily, there's some work to do around redefining, but I actually think it's more remembering
mm,
than anything
yes.
else.
Uh,
There's a remembering that has to happen amongst us
right.
as a people. And I only say that because I know in my own personal life there are things that I know that did not come from any book,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's connection to ancestral knowledge
Right.
that is not in any book
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. And it you get downloads, right? Um, I think there are just some things that are in the archives of our DNA
Right.
that I think we underestimate. And I think there's so much distraction,
Mm-hmm.
because it's hard to do that when you live in a um under a system of racism, white supremacy. uh you're constantly being pulled outside of yourself. So we're bombarded with so much every day that we rarely get to even sit in silence with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it's social media, television. Now, these are things, I'm at you're big on this. These are things that we are in control of. What
Mm-hmm.
we put in our bodies,
Right.
which affects the way we think and behave, by the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
The things, the environments that we expose ourselves to, that we put our children in. Whew, it's just so many things that if we are giving time away to ourselves, we'll be surprised. Okay, the voices that come from beyond, the voices that are waiting, the people that are the master teachers
Right.
that are there waiting for us to solicit their help,
Mm-hmm.
to come to them, to learn from them. And these are not just living masters, master
Mm-hmm.
teachers. These are master teachers who have gone on, right?
Exactly.
That are waiting to still impart that knowledge to us.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to connect. So I think it's not just even just redefining, a lot of it is remembering. And
Right.
remembering is two parts. It's remembering as far as uh um remembering as far as accessing those archives in our DNA, and
Mm-hmm.
remembering as in putting ourselves back together. Because to live in whiteness requires you to compartmentalize, right? To fragment
Mm-hmm.
yourself, because
Right.
that's the only real way to survive it.
Mm-hmm.
It requires that we fragment ourselves. So when I say remembering, it's two parts to it. It's tapping into
Mm-hmm.
that archive within our own DNA, the ancestral piece, and
Mm-hmm.
then also calling back the parts of ourselves that have been robbed from us,
Right.
that have been killed, that has been taken away, that we've been separated from, calling those parts of ourselves back, bringing them back to each other, right? So that we can really understand the whole. Because right now we only understand in part,
Mm-hmm.
because we only see in part. We're like, my spiritual life is separate from my regular life,
Right.
right? That's Yurugu, right? Right? We have to fragment. And so when I say remember, I'm talking about doing something counter to the fragmentation that we've already had to endure, that we already do to ourselves because of the system that we find ourselves living under. We're living out of a place of survival. So there's a remembrance that has to take place where you start bringing those pieces back together so that they can make sense. Because you're trying to understand your spiritual self separate from other parts of yourself. You're
Yeah.
trying to understand your physical self separate from other parts of yourself. And you can't get the fullness of that part without the other parts connected to it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is when you talk about fragmenting yourself, and that to show up, to be able to achieve the whole idea of this soft life, that means that you no longer really have to be able to fragment yourself, because we live in a society where, if you go to a job, a 9 to 5, you work in white society, you have to fragment yourself. You cannot show up the same way that you show up at home, or you show up with your homegirls, your homeboys, even your children. There's a part of you. So if we are trying to embrace this soft life, and I've talked to you about this. I said, I have that privilege of not having to fragment myself, because I know that in essence my husband does. He does have to. He can't show
Code switching is fragmenting.
up. Right,
Code
coach.
switching is a layer of fragmentation. But go ahead.
Right. And so then I'm able to create my lanes, my different lanes, but I'm able to show up as me. I'm still able to show up as my I, right? Like in all of these different areas of my life. That goes to what you were talking about in the beginning. That goes into the privilege piece. So if you are at home, you get to stay home with your children or whomever. You're teaching your own kids, because when you go have to go and show up at that school, right? You got a code switch and you have to fragment yourself because you have to take your kids to that school and you got to bat your eyes at them white folks, so that's fragmenting yourself. But when you say, okay, now I can teach my own kids, I can teach them about our history, you no longer have to do that. So the thing is, when my kids see me, like I had this conversation with our kids the other day. I said, the person you see here on YouTube, like when you watch my show, because I know they probably watching right now. When you watch, am I the same person who talks to you at home? And they said yes. So that is what we're talking about. Like, you no longer have to, like, fragment yourself when you start separating that. And this is a form of separation. So we need to acknowledge that there are ways to separate. Like, just having conversations with we talk on the phone all the time, right? That's a form of being able to separate and talk to a person who understands the world I live in. Because when I talk to some other people in other walks of life, whether they're related to me or not, I'm not able to talk to them on the levels that I can talk to you on. So, that is also a form of separation and being able to become whole again and being able to be who you are.
That's a good point, Maat. Mm-hmm.
With different people, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to be who you are with your husband, your spouse, or your what, like with your spouse, with your children, and then there are times, you do have to do that code switch. I can't talk about some of the metaphysical things that I talk about with other members of my family, right? Like that can't really go there with them, right? So then you have to understand, that's why I do believe in some forms, some parts of the soft life movement about protecting your peace. That's a big one in the soft life movement.
Wait, I have a question. So, can I live a soft life, and can I engage in the, like, embrace the soft life movement and still be about revolution? What does that look like?
Mm.
Can I be in this, like, can I be a part of the soft life movement and be married to a revolutionary, or is that struggle love? Because I don't know any real revolutionaries that have been wealthy. Was Coretta King in struggle love? Was Malcolm X's wife in struggle love? Marcus Garvey, was that struggle love? That's what I'm over here thinking about right now.
That's
Like,
a good question.
yeah, like the way that you guys are defining. No, no, don't get me wrong. What she talked about, with struggle love, how she defined it, I agree. That's an abusive,
Mm-hmm.
relationship. If you're being abused, you should not stay there. That's
Right.
toxic. I feel the same way. I feel like Black people are in a domestic abuse relationship with America. I
Mm-hmm.
feel that way. Just look at the way we act
Yep.
with America, right? It's like, no, America is abusive, but America feeds me and clothes me, and I've never really walked a day in my life. I've never really been independent,
Mm.
right? That's why I say all of these independent talk and all of this crap is just illusions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just something for us to talk about, because when we talk about real independence, when we really get onto the nitty gritty, then you have to talk about systemic stuff. And a lot of people don't
Yeah.
want to face systemic stuff. They'd rather say I'm independent as it pertains or in relations to a man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But Black woman, are you really independent?
That's a good
In
point.
the true definition of independence,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to talk independence only as it pertains to men,
Yep.
but you don't want to talk independence and self-realization, right? And being self-sufficient as it pertains to these systems.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the real conversation of independence lies. But you
Mm-hmm.
know what? You want to have these surface-based, distracting conversations. But yeah, I just had a question about that because the way y'all are describing soft life, can I be married to a revolutionary? Can I be a revolutionary and engage in fully the
Mm-hmm.
soft life? I wonder because I feel like you can't. But I'm a leader out there for anyone who want to answer.
Yeah, answer that, y'all. Answer that in the chat or in the comments if you see this afterwards. Answer that question because that is a great question. That is a great question. Omawale say you just hit the nail on the head. It's selfish, individualistic spirit we're dealing with. It doesn't produce, it only consumes. Yes. And some people are just open to that. They're like, and they're like, yeah, I'm a consumer. I'm a and they're not really a capitalist. They're just a consumer, right? Like because we talk
Ain't controlling no means of
right.
production, nothing. They just got a six figure salary
Mhm.
and feeling like yeah. Mm-mm.
So, the Zion said, I don't blame capitalism for Black folks having an individual mindset. I think integration has more to do with why someone will embrace that mentality. But yeah, but I agree that you cannot necessarily blame capitalism. It's more of it's like a byproduct. Like one is a byproduct of the other. So because of integration, right? Like because in essence, even before integration, because we were in this society, we were still engaging in some form of capitalism, so it was more of how does it benefit? Because, we talk about the only Black communities or and there was more than, you have the main Black Wall Street, but there were others like that all over the country. When you talk about those like communities, they're still engaging in it. It's like a kind of like a side by side thing. That's why I brought up what Dr. Marimbiani said. Like, we can't do this side by side separation because even though it seemed to work, did it really? Like, did it really work? Because we're imitating. You look at the women of that time and how they dressed. Who did they dress like? Who were they imitating? Like the people, the suits, the business suits that Black men were wearing. Who were they imitating? So I think that we have to understand that it's more of a byproduct. So we are because we did integrate, and I talked to my sister here about this, about the whole idea of even integrating into a system, into these schools and all of this, even though while we're walking in there, we're being spat on, we're being kicked, we're being, like they didn't want us there. But we're just like, yeah, we want to go in there and continue to be because we didn't think of it as oppression, right? You don't think of going in a play, even though that they don't want you there. And then they didn't change the curriculum, right? The curriculum was built for them. It was built for their advancement. And then that was even another form of oppression. So I think that we have to understand how all of these things play together. Because when you talk about like imperialism and things like that, it has a religion, it has an economic, it has an economic system, it has all of these different things. It has and the education system, all of those things come into play to kind of create the big picture. And what is the big picture? For white society to advance. Why? Because it ties into what? Genetic annihilation. Like that's what it goes back to. It goes back to what Dr. Francis Cresswell Welsing talks about, which is genetic annihilation. Because in their thinking, in order to advance, they have to oppress other groups of people. So that's where it kind of, for me, it ties into that. Did you want to speak to that, Hanifa?
No, I was just saying. He says I think integration has more to do with it. Why someone will embrace that mentality. And for me, the only thing that comes to my mind is integration was about access.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was about access.
Yep. Access
And
to
if and to the individualistic to the individualistic mindset. That's what it's about. Access. See, it's not being looked at as individualistic. Is that these people have the access to the resources and everything. So therefore, that means that they have better quality stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's the idea of the white man's ice being cooler. That's all that is. So if his ice is cooler and his schools are better and his neighborhoods are safer, then I want access.
Right.
And in order for you to grant me access, I have to prove to you that I am just as smart
Mm-hmm.
and that I am just as safe, whatever that is, not an illusion, but I'm just as safe as you. I am just as smart as you. I am just as hardworking as you. All you have to do is let me in so that I can prove it to you. And I promise you that if you just give me the access and you let me in the door, you're going to like me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make you like me because I'm going to perform to the best of my ability to prove to you that I am not the animal that you think I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Integration is about access and the need to prove our value and our worthiness to a people who is not oppressing us because of our blackness.
Right. Right. I'm gonna put the we're gonna be winding down soon, so I'm gonna put the link in the chat. If anybody wants to come up and share their thoughts. I'm gonna go through more of the comments
Oh,
here.
one more thing. I know Omawale, he put that was the word I was looking for. You have to become discontent.
Mm,
He used the word right, and he says it's the prerequisite,
yep.
right, for free. Exactly, because
Yep.
if you're not discontent, you don't see any problem. You
Mm-hmm.
don't see anything to be free from. So
Right.
that was the word. Thank you, Omawale, for that, because
Well,
God knows.
sometimes it takes sickness in order for you to get well. Like you don't know that you're sick, right? Until something hits you and just it's like, oh, well, what I've been doing for so long is not working. And so then you have to start changing your habits in order to get, in order to get well. And sometimes that's why, I do preach actually treating your bodies in a way that where you don't, it's always like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so that is what I preach that. But at the same time, sometimes for some people, it hits them as discomfort, and it goes to, while it says we're willing to sacrifice freedom in exchange for comfort and convenience, right? And the thing is it really comfortable? Is it really convenient though? You
You
know,
know what? We need to burn all these. Gosh, look, we need to burn.
right,
Okay,
right.
like the say home bun it, right? We need to bun. I'm not even gonna say burn. I'm just gonna use my accent because God knows I be struggling to code switch y'all. We need to bun all of these self-help books that these women. No, I'm serious.
I
That's a
hear
big
you.
part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you like our women need to dash away the self-help books and
Mm-hmm.
start studying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because to study your ancestors is to study yourself.
Right.
Just bond them. Just
Mm-hmm.
bond them because this is a part of a part of the problem. They could tell you what and no, shout out to Deepak. They could tell you what Deepak says. They could tell you what what's that one, my aunt, the
Are you
one with
talking
the
about the rich man, poor man?
no, not no, no, that's the man. That's the man. Not the
Oh,
one like the richest man in Babylon, rich dad, poor dad, not that
okay,
one.
good.
What's the brother's name? The one that wrote that book where the first one is be impeccable with your word.
Oh,
The
who was
four laws of what is
the
that?
agreements? Mm-hmm.
Yes, the four agreements.
Mm-hmm.
We can quote. Listen, we can quote those things.
Yep.
We can quote them.
Mm-hmm.
We can quote. I'm gonna leave my brothers and sisters in Christ alone. I'm gonna leave them alone today. I am going to leave them alone today. I promise. I am. Shout out to my brothers and sisters in Christ. Okay, we can quote all of these books. Yes, thank you, Omawale. Dan Miguel Ruiz, right? We can quote all of these self help books. right? But we can't quote any of our revolutionaries. We
Mhm.
can't, we are not studied. We do not know history
We look
outside of
we look
slavery.
down we look down on them though, right? Like
Right. And
we
not
don't.
only that, not only that, if we're studied, a lot of these strategies that these people use are not new.
Mhm.
It's
That's
the
true.
same stuff over and over and over, and we keep falling for it because we are not studying. So
Mhm.
when I say like black women in general, for me personally, like my thing is like, don't pick up another self-help book until you after you have read, at least read Urugu by Marimba Annie. At least read the ISIS papers by Dr. Cress Wilson. Like, don't touch another self-help book,
Mhm.
okay? Until you have read those two sisters.
Mhm.
That's what I wanted to say to that.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Iapo says that is why I feel it's incredibly important that we get control of our own narratives and stop allowing others to define us. It's messing us up. That's why I write. Yes, and shout out to you. I want to talk to you about your book at some point. But yeah, like that's what we do, right? Like, I talked about this before. We call ourselves black, right? Because you know we call ourselves African American. We called ourselves colored. We called ourselves Negroes, and that is all what we do. And I even talked about the whole idea of the black women, the black women's was it they're the kind of like the archetypes of black women that were in the media. And so what we're supposed to do, right, in our communities, in our society, it's just like if you are raising children and they're looking up to you, they're supposed to see the work that you do on your inner self, and then you work on your inner self, and then that's projected out into your community. But what we do is we take from society and we're projecting that from outward inward. And so what happens is the whole idea of the angry black woman didn't necessarily come from us. It came from the depiction. The whole idea of the emasculating black woman, that was a depiction. Or even the black men, right? The way that black men are projected in society. Black men have now taken on that role of like being the promiscuous, or the man who goes and spreads his seed all over the place. That was something that was projected to us, and now it's going from outward inward. So now black men are kind of owning that. Like that's what we're supposed to do. Like that the whole idea, and also the historical context of where that comes from. But then they start portraying it to you, and so now that is what we have become. And so now that has started to define us. So even when we start seeing all of these different things in media, in movies, like we start embodying that. Just I remember watching reality shows like Basketball Wives and stuff like that. What happens when you constantly um look at those types of things? You become that. So even this whole idea of the soft life, that is a depiction of what we see in the media. Just like the revolutionaries that you talked about, right? And we talked about before, like why we don't even look up, like we're not telling our children to become these revolution. Nobody is saying, oh, I want you to become the next Malcolm X, right? Because that's a dangerous route. Like you're not necessarily telling your children to become that, right? So we don't even look at our own communities and say, hey, like they've been married for 25 plus years, like let's look to them, let's go learn from them. We're like, no, let's go learn from Jay-Z and Beyonce. Like, we are taking from toxicity and trying to project that into our communities and say, like, this is who we want to be. Because what does that lead to? We don't necessarily want to be like Beyonce and Jay-Z because they have a great marriage. It's
The
the
status.
the status.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And we view and value material things, money, more than we value the substance of people, the core of people. The value is now being portrayed in a way that what's the root? It goes back to how we view each other and how we're using capitalism against one another. So now we're fighting tooth and nail against each other over different celebrities. Nobody wants to let Kanye go on and be Kanye, right? We got to defend him, right? Because of his status, because of what,
I just said this to my one sister, and I love her daily. She knows that. But I just said, for me, I am looking at the conversation, and I just said to her, Kanye didn't say anything that you and I do not already know.
right.
So I'm so confused by the elevating of what he's supposedly doing,
Mm-hmm.
because the information I watched the one interview, and I know, and I'm just gonna be honest, I am very hard to please, right? Like, I am not easily like
Right. I'm the
I'm
same way.
yeah,
I'm
I'm being very honest. Like, I'm just not that person, and I get it, and I'm okay with that. Um, Actually, it's not that I'm not easily impressed. It's not that I'm hard to please. I'm not easily impressed, right?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I listened to the interview, for me, it was like I'm trying to understand what's the depth. Like, what is so deep about what the brother is saying? Like, I know men around me who talk about small hats, right? I know those men, and the way the industry works, and you understand what I'm saying, the anti-blackness and the
Mm-hmm.
capitalistic mindset and all of that. I'm very aware of that. So for me, when I'm listening to the interview, I'm just like, he's not doing anything new.
Mm-hmm.
He's not saying anything. So then I had to really peel it back and say, then what is it? His billionaire status.
Yep.
Something in us pedestalizes these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we try to make it like it's about that brother is not revolutionary. He's not. He's not. Right? And so for me, I'm like, is this a selfish thing, or is it about the collective? So me, what I'm willing to do as it pertains to that brother is to wait it out.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to learn to wait stuff out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And let it play out for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's not something that you need to direct, like you need to deal with directly, right? And deal with like on an emergency. Like, it's not an emergency to figure out where this brother mine is. That's not an emergency.
Right.
So why do we feel like we have to come to a conclusion
Mm-hmm.
about what direction or what he's doing? Why are we so eager to come to a conclusion that you have the one side saying, no, this is selfish, and then the other side is saying, you guys are lunatics, you guys are not tapped in.
Right.
Very
Right.
condescending language, by the way.
Right.
Very condescending language. Yeah,
And
you're not tapped in. That's why you don't get it.
right.
Mhm.
Right.
You're not on the same frequency with ye. You know
And
what I'm saying?
I
Yeah.
had
Mhm.
that conversation, right? I had that conversation a few weeks ago on my channel about the Woman King, right? Because we end up like, because we put so much value into certain people, it's like, oh well, we start shaming people. Like, and even with the Kanye, like there are people who, there's they I would consider them to be like, spiritual people. And they're just
Mhm.
like, talking to the people who are following, like, yeah, like you're not tapped in, or, go ahead, you can unfollow me if you don't agree with me. And I'm just like, yo, like, why are you being this way about this person that you don't know? You have direct connection with some of these other people, some of these people who have been supporting you, following you, whatever it may be, and you're just like, I'm gonna throw you away for this person that I don't even know, and who would probably not even spit on me if I was on fire. But okay, like, and
You
that.
have connections to people who have been saying
Mm-hmm.
the
Yep.
same thing that he's saying
Mm-hmm.
for how long?
Mm-hmm.
But these are not the people that we're propping up.
Yep.
Right? He now gets our energy and our attention
Mm-hmm.
because he's a billionaire.
Yep.
Simply because the media says this is what you should be occupied and focused on right now. It's
Mm.
a control of what you think,
Yep.
what you speak, and what you feel. And that's a part of the unplugging that we really need to talk about as well. We have to unplug from, because there's a thing of control that's happening. The
Mm.
media tells you what's important.
Yep.
The mainstream media tells you what you should focus on at
Mhm.
this time in your life, what you
Mhm.
should give your energy to, what's of value to talk about, right? We call it trending topics.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So for me, maybe that's where I lack, like that's where I'm not impressed. I listened to the interview and I mean, my aunt, is that bad? I was just like, oh, okay,
I was the same. I was the same way.
okay,
I
all
was
right,
the same way. I was
okay,
saying, okay.
okay.
That, he's not saying anything that we don't already know. So and I think when you have grown to also like someone and you've listened to their music and all of these, you're trying, even though you see them going in a direction, you're still trying to hang on to something. You
Nah, my aunt, nah. Listen, some of these people could care less about that brother. A part of it, let me
Mm,
tell you what part of it is. It's this idea that the only way for us to bring change is we have to have billionaires and millionaires on our side.
mm-hmm,
So
got you.
they're excited about that. Like, yeah, we finally gonna get somebody with some resources on
Yeah,
our side. But the truth be told, any revolution, right, started with poor people, because there's a level of discontentment
yeah,
that has to happen. And it
mm,
only, that discontentment, you know who feels it the most? The people at the bottom
yeah,
of their societies. So your idea is we need people with this and that and all of this to bring about a change.
mm-hmm,
Right? We need people with fiat. We need people like him who are billionaires
mm-hmm,
before we can move forward and bring
yeah,
about any change. So there's this idea where we get excited, where we see this man talking,
mm-hmm,
like sounding a little revolutionary. We get excited
right,
because for us, it's like, whoa, we can, if we get somebody on our side like that, now we talking, now we doing something, and that's false. If you follow any revolts in America, any revolutions across the globe, this was not wealthy people.
yeah,
Wealthy people contributed to those movements. They kept their hands clean as much as they could.
mm-hmm,
But that is not who was moving these things forward. Where did we get this idea from?
mm-hmm,
No, that's what I'm disagreeing with. No. These people don't care about his music, and it's just that he is a billionaire, and it's this idea of, yeah, we gonna get him on our side. Now we really doing something. Now we have some power,
yeah.
man. Ah.
Right, right. That goes back to your question, can you be a revolutionary? Can you be with a revolutionary and have a soft life? That goes
Or be one,
or
man.
be
Can
one.
you be one as well and have
Right,
and
be
yeah.
one and be with one. Mhm. Yep, yep. TWP Popcorn Peace, good to see you. Thank you for always coming through. I appreciate you. Let's see. Um, let's see if there's any more comments here. Um, let's see. Ain't nothing soft about revolution. Agreed. Agreed. So Wiley says you're speaking about women who have accepted defeat and will encourage their male countable counterparts to accept defeat as well. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And Iapo says exactly. Separation doesn't have to mean proximity. Two people in the same house who never speak are more separated than two people separated by a continent who can't stop thinking about each other. That's a good point. That's a good point, Iapo. And Wale says they ain't trying to struggle or fight. They want comfort and convenience above all else. Exactly. We talked about that. We talked about the whole idea of that comfort, and if you um it was something we talked about earlier today, and I can't even remember what I was thinking about, um but yeah. So TWP popcorn, the softness is what give the man fighting his rejuvenation for keeping up the fight he's in. Okay. Um so you think the softness of the woman is giving the man, and I do, when we have are in these spaces, a lot of the men talk about that men will continue and do certain things. And I've had this conversation with my husband as well. Like, men do certain things for their women, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so I do believe that there is some truth to that, right? Like, there are things that you are trying to protect. But at the same time, is most of the revolutionaries that you saw, that they were not revolutionaries by themselves. In their own right, they're women also. They just didn't get the, like, the fame of the men, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But they were revolutionaries within themselves. And do we can we really say that they were being, quote unquote, living a soft life? Because a revolutionary life, and almost every elder that you talk to who speaks about this talks about that, like, you are not living in a so-called not living really in comfort. When you're living in a revolutionary life, it's not a life of convenience. Being revolutionary in itself, like, whatever you are revolting from, like, even being a let's just say you decide to homeschool your children after them being in school for a while, that is also a convenience that you no longer have, you know, even if whether you were working or not, now they are with you all the time. They're in your home all the time. They're around you all the time. So there's a convenience there, a quote unquote convenience, right? That no longer exists. So that's the same thing that I look at when we're talking about revolution. So whenever you have any type of revolution, I would say the first revolution is like within yourself. Like, there's a convenience that's no longer there. A lot of us who have left religious programming, there's a convenience that is no longer there. I mean, we talked about this today, even with veganism, right? There's a convenience that is no longer there when you have chosen to take another path with your eating habits, or even working out and all of those things. It's a comfort or convenience that's no longer there. But the outcome, what is the outcome of that? The outcome, what is to come, is greater than that so-called comfort. I don't even call it comfort. I always call it a um discomfort zone, because none of us are really comfortable in this society, in the way things are. You feel that discomfort. That's why we're talking about that. Like, Omawala used the word discontent. Like, we are discontent, and it becomes so great. We use a lot of people will say, oh, I hate it here, right? Like, being funny, but in a sense, you're kind of like, what is this? Like, what is this that we're in? What is this that we're belonging to? Like, is there another planet that we can go to? Because this is uncomfortable. Like, it's an uncomfortable existence, especially when your mind starts changing. Those frequencies in your brain start changing. You start seeing things, and you're looking at something, and you're like, why is this other person, I'm looking at this same thing, and they don't feel anything? They don't have this anxiety coming upon them, and that's where the discontent. Because also, how you're feeling, you don't want your children to feel that way. You're just like, I said our children may still be having these conversations, right? Because you're talking about years of things happening, and then years to get them back on track. But at the same time, you're like, okay, I have to do some of this footwork, so that we are not still doing the same thing, and expecting, insanity, a different result.
I think
Uh,
the first step that people should probably be taking in that is, and I'm gonna let you speak on your soft life topic because we kind of veered off quite a bit. um, as usual, is teaching your children self sufficiency as much as possible. Because if you can raise the children and know how to feed themselves,
That's
then
true.
they can speak up against and
Mhm.
be comfortable with facing that giant. But if you are raising a generation who is still dependent on these systems of oppression to also feed them, then they will be having these same exact conversations again and again and again from generation to generation. So I think we have to begin the work of like teaching our children self-sufficiency and being able to at least feed themselves. At
Mhm.
least feed
Mhm.
themselves, create jobs for themselves, like those type of things.
Right.
Because outside of that, they're gonna be having the same conversations.
Yep. Yep. Mhm. And just going through the comments, Design said maybe if we build in Africa, we can create a better life for our women. One thing that and Hanifa talks about this a lot. We have conversations about this. It's just like the mind, like the mindset, right? It goes back to Marcus Garvey, right? If you're no good here, you're gonna be no good over there.
Well,
So
that's kind of what happened with Liberia.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
sort of what happened with Liberia. A lot, some of the Black Americans that did take that offer and went over there. They started oppressing
Mhm,
the indigenous people of that land in the same way that they themselves were oppressing America.
mhm,
Right? Though that's out there as well. So you're right. It's a mindset.
mhm.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, yeah. And so that again, that's why I always say kill that white man inside of you, because until you do that, until you do the intentional work that it takes every single day, then you just become that thing that you hate. You just become the oppressor. So, what are the conversations that we're having in these YouTube streets? We're just wanting to oppress each other. That's what it comes down to because of the society. When we had that conversation a couple of weeks ago about capitalism, we all agreed that someone had to be at the bottom. Like Iyapo says, it requires a victim. So if we agree to that, what are we saying as a community? Are we saying that we're okay with someone being at the bottom? What does that look like? And I think a lot of us, we cannot fathom a society that does not exist like the society that we're in. So what does that mean? Wherever we go, we can go to Mars somewhere, right? We can go to another planet. If we still have this mindset, we're going to just be practicing capitalism on another planet.
You're gonna take your value system with you.
Mhm.
Whatever
Right.
your value system is, if you're going to say, then in order for me to be on top of this hierarchy, of this pyramid, it requires that I exploit others. You're going to take that mindset with you wherever you go.
Right.
And I agree with you. If I'm having a conversation and we're all agreeing that it's problematic and it's unhealthy and it's toxic to require an underclass in order for it to function, if we're all agreeing that that's a problem, no, not that that's a problem, that it requires that,
Mhm.
then why don't we all have an issue with that?
Yeah.
That's very concerning.
That
Yeah.
is concerning. I do agree. But it goes back to that pull your what's about your bootstrap, right? Like it's that whole idea of well, we all, because we say this in a lot. Well, we all can make it. Can we? Like, can we really all make it?
You
And
know, you know, my husband said to me in the car today, he said, what we don't, and this is the soft life, and but it's connection to rest,
uh-huh.
right? Okay. He was like, we don't even realize that all it requires is for all of us to decide to just not do anything,
Mm-hmm.
and it will collapse.
Yep.
It
Mm-hmm.
requires us to stay busy and stay producing as well, my art, right?
Yeah,
It
that's
requires that. And so he said the thing is that the thing can collapse if we just sit still and decide not to move. But here's the thing, in order to do that, you might have to be able to learn how to live without light,
mm-hmm.
feed yourself, right? You have to have things in place to make those types of moves.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm trying to say? Because a lot of our people are just not, we're just not there.
Yeah.
Some of us have head starts. Like there's a lot of things I need to learn as far as preparedness and all of these other things, right? I still have a lot to learn in that area. I tell people all the time, I don't fear living without electricity. When you come from the Caribbean, you come from an island where you have hurricane seasons and the hurricane be tearing up your islands and you got to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you need to do when there's no running water and when there's no electricity. So that's not a threat to some of us. However, there are other things that I still need to work on unplugging from that
Mm-hmm.
I might have a fear about, right? And I'm saying this because even though I'm having this conversation, I think I said this to you today. I think a lot of us really need to start admitting some things and being honest when we enter into these conversations, right? So for some of our black men, if you're afraid, just say you're afraid,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know that's tough. That's tough to say. But instead of deflecting and making it about the black that black people is a problem onto themselves, right? Just say, I don't want if I could peel off my skin and start over, I will not come back as a black person. Just say, no, seriously, just say, I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed of black people.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, I have a level of self hate that is uncomfortable to admit to openly.
Right.
Just say that because what you're doing is you're wasting our time because
Mm.
you are dishonest, you're intellectually dishonest, and you're disingenuous. Favorite YouTube word. Okay, hopefully we put it on the shelf going into the new calendar year. But
Comparison.
you're being disingenuous, right? When you enter it and you're entering the conversations in bad faith, like you're not honest. So we
Mm-hmm.
really can't have the conversation and begin to unpack and to unlearn and rebuild some things because you're not even coming in with with transparency. You're
Right.
coming in and you're making black people your issue all the while not really being comfortable with admit this is the people who can't find nothing positive about
Mm.
black people to say. Nothing. Your mother and your father is black. You have aunties and there's nothing positive that came out of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing positive that you can draw from that experience that lets me know everything I need to know. So stop showing up in these conversations acting like you are really concerned with the condition of the community. No, 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 no. You hate the community. You despise the community because you hate and you despise your own blackness because you seek to alienate yourself from your own blackness, like Dr. Amos Wilson talks about, right? In self-hate, self-defeat, right? You seek to alienate yourself. This is why it's so important to you every chance you get, you tear down blackness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you wish, you just can't do it. You wish to alienate yourself from blackness. Wait until some of our black people have access to the transference of consciousness from
Mm.
one body to the next. Watch what happens.
Right.
Watch the bodies they decide to transfer their consciousness into.
Mm-hmm. 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 Iyapo said he, in response to your question, he said that is a great question. I don't think so. So we have people saying that they don't really think so. There's some I think who said that they think you can, but mm,
I think Omawale answered it right. There is no softness. Just the word revolution. It's a revolt.
yeah, yeah.
Is a revolt is a violent thing.
Mhm.
It's movement. It's aggression.
Mhm.
Right. That's the opposite of softness.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Um yes, we are imitating the imitators. Exactly. So I he said I think a reason it didn't work because we didn't build in Africa. We were in a better position before integration. Um yeah. I mean I think there's a lot of factors, right? Like there's a lot of factors there. And I think that also kind of with that when we go to that functional inferiority piece, we also had to believe that Africa was inferior too, so we bought into that as well. How many black people do you know? I know growing up I heard this a lot. I ain't African, I ain't going back, I don't want to go to Africa, I want to live in no hut, like we had to buy into to that in inferiority that is associated with Africa, right? Because what did they show us on TV growing up? They showed us the kids with the flies all over their face, you know. So
The image that the name Africa evokes, and the
mhm,
people who speak so strongly have never been, they have never visited, and they speak so strongly, like the
mm,
fact that you still talking about huts,
right.
you still talking about huts.
Right.
And I always use the example quickly of my son. I tell you this all the time. I tell people this all the time. My son, when he was about 6 or 7 years old, and he saw a part of, I think it was Ethiopia, that they were showing, the parts where they show the people with the flies just sitting on their face, like they can't feel the fly, and they're talking and they're sitting by huts. He saw that image, and my son, 6 or 7 years old, was confused. He literally asked, "Where? Which part of Africa is that?"
Mhm.
Because that's not what he sees when he goes to Africa every 2 years with his father. That's not what he sees.
Mhm.
His father doesn't live that way, right? So he's looking and he's saying, "What? Now, does that exist?" And I had to break that down to him. But that way of living exists even right here in
Yeah,
America.
I was about to say,
You get
depending
what
on
I'm saying?
uh-huh, yeah.
Right. So I had to explain that, but for him, no one can convince him that that is the sole image of Africa, because he goes there frequently.
Mhm.
Like, he goes there enough time to know that that's not necessarily true. So the people who talk like that are people who's never even taken and in fact, you don't even need to take a plane there, to be honest, at this point in 2022. But these are the people who have not even visited.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Peace to Mr. No Fly Zone. Thank you for coming through. Appreciate you. Let's see. All right, we are going to be wrapping up. I'm just going through the comments. Oh, Dante. Peace, Dante. Good to see you here. Peace to you. And let's see. Okay, so Iyapo says, I have been gauging my life since Kanye West made his statements. After weeks, I've discovered that it has not affected it has not affected my life one iota, nor will it. I care about what affects me and our people. Exactly. I agree with that. We get wrapped up in celebrities. Uh, okay. And Omoa says we are the resources. Yapo says the trick is that more money and materialism they have, the less they can maneuver in those systems. The less power they have, they are more controlled. Think of the movie The Firm. That's a good point. Dante says, can the black people champion the internal versus the external? Not sure. What do you mean by you? Do you What's your take on this, Hanifa?
I'm not sure. Maybe he can expound on his question.
Yes.
I'm not
Yeah, I'm
sure.
not really sure what that
Mhm.
means. Uh-huh. Zion said, yeah, is a rugged individualist. However, all black folks can benefit from Kanye's fight against Jewish control over the black voice and industries. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times we start speaking to things that we knew existed. Um, he didn't just wake up, one day this year and knew that what they were doing. But yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. But I think what we were, even what Hanifa was speaking to, was the whole idea that we've had people talk about this, for years. Like, this is nothing new, you know. Peace, Wally. Thank you for coming through. Peace to you, peace to you. Okay, let's see. Peace to Motley Grows. Peace to you. I always tell my daughter to try to learn something new every day. Keep your mind fresh. Knowledge is power. Yes. And even the brother that Hanifa will be having on her channel tomorrow, one thing that he said, someone had asked him the question, um what what should a person who's revolutionary minded do? And you need to be reading something, reading something that pertains to your people every single day, and engaging with knowledge every single day. So that's something that we all need to do. And we see how rampant the lack of knowledge is in our community, but also we the ones who believe in the knowledge from our elders, from the people, from the people that look like us. We need to be the ones speaking it, right? We have to speak up for truth, because there's a lot of us that look like us that don't value certain things if they come from us, because we have bought into that inferiority.
There's even an attack on eldership as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I know brother Owale didn't. I was trying to catch the replay today while I was driving,
Mhm.
and I know he didn't. I don't know. I don't know. He may have, because I didn't get to watch it in its entirety. I'm gonna have to finish up the replay later, but uh, even the conversation he was having,
Mm.
there's a component of that has to do with the lack of respect for eldership.
Right.
You get what I'm trying to say? And we're seeing that even in these spaces, there's a lot of that that's happening. As
Mhm.
far as like all elders, like they were from another time. They don't know what they're talking about, and
Mhm.
so there's that lack of respect for
Yeah,
eldership as
that's
well. Yeah.
true. Yep. If Information Man Show, peace to you. Thank you for coming through. I always appreciate you coming through. Um, okay. I'm not gonna get to every comment, but I wanted to look at some of these. What is
I think Dante had cleared it up to my ad, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see. Um, okay, let me go down. Um, is this the spirituality, stoicism, etc.? Um, So he said championing. I think he said the internal versus.
Yeah, yeah, and then like spirituality, I guess the focus in developing ourselves inwardly, because stoicism for me is even connected to discipline. Like, one of the frustrations with our people, that I see on social media, is that we're too reactionary,
Mm-hmm.
right? When
Yeah.
you're practicing stoicism, there's no room for that. And I think Omawale spoke to that earlier, where I think it's Asata Shakur is who he quoted in saying that a revolutionary cannot have a reactionary husband, and he said vice versa as well.
Mm-hmm.
So stoicism, I think, speaks to that part where our emotions are constantly being manipulated, and we're just reactionary to everything. Someone says something and it's like, oh, you don't like black people? That's what they said. They said they don't like black people. Why are you acting like you about to do a backflip about it? Why are you on the floor kicking in the air about it? This is not new. So I think there needs to be, and stoicism could be an approach to that. I don't know. But there has to be something around discipline. It has to be something around um, emotional intelligence and developing that within our people. And I think spirituality, actually, to Dante's point, I think spirituality, if we are developing the spiritual side of us, allows for space for that as well. You know what I'm saying? To where you're not just reactionary about every single thing. Your discernment is then sharpened. You can look at a Kanye West interview or whatever, and you can discern, what's happening here, what agenda is at play. I think spirituality comes into play in that sense. But the stoicism, that could be something that black people could start. I don't know, but we definitely lack some discipline around like our emotions, and once that happens, you are a target for emotional manipulation all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And I like what the water baron tomb did say. He said we have to separate the conventional ways of thinking from how we approach our society, being introspective and truly understanding who our ancestors are. um in what true spirituality is counter to this society. So that definitely is important too, because we talked about this too, about how the whole idea of accepting when we even start going into spirituality, spiritual systems. And I think I said this to you today about how spirituality can also be a form of escapism as well. So we have escapism like going into like capitalism, or going into or integrating or assimilating into the society, but then we also use spirituality as a form of escapism as well. And so we just go from one mode. Like we might not necessarily want to be inside the religious programming or whatever, because we have decided that that does not work for our life or whatever we're trying to do. So then we go into the spiritual realm, but we still are using that. And so we're all love and light, right? Like we're all, we're all one in everything. We don't want to deal with the whole idea of white supremacy and racism. So we just go into this whole spiritual realm where everything is sunshine and rainbows. So, the the thing is understanding that, because that is a form of what we consider that soft, because we want to protecting our peace, which I do believe in protecting your peace. I do believe in rejecting people who are trying to cause trouble in your life, but at the same time we're still dealing with something in our society. Like no one is looking at you as a spiritual like, I'm not gonna say nobody, but a lot of people are not looking. Some people are not looking at you as, oh, you're a spiritual being. They're looking at you like you black. And so, your husband is black, and in certain areas and living in the South, this was big, you
That
know.
a part of protecting your peace also has to be confronting that which
Mhm.
continues to invade your
Yeah,
peace.
yeah,
So
that's true.
we are big on separating from families and friends. We wanna tackle this macro thing
Mhm.
by doing micro work,
Right.
right? And so we will separate from family. You see, I mean, you've seen the statuses. The New Year is coming up. We're gonna see the statuses. We're gonna talk. They're gonna be talking about cutting people off. They're gonna be talking about blocking people. They're gonna be talking about toxic family members and all of this stuff. But when it comes to the system of racism, white supremacy, everyone wants to have their head in the cloud. I'm deep,
Mhm.
I'm spiritual. And indeed,
Mhm.
there is no race when you're talking about the spiritual realm. That
Mhm.
doesn't exist. But you have to understand, even though you're a spiritual being, you are showing up in this world in a black body.
Mhm.
And if black bodies are being oppressed and injustices are happening to black bodies, right? The thing is, your physical body can't live in that spiritual realm that you so want to make your permanent residence.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is to die, is for this body to be shed.
Right.
So as long as you are not shedding this body, you have to do something about the injustices that are brought on to
Mhm.
bodies that look like yours. There
Mhm.
is a thing as walking between worlds. There is a thing as existing with it between two realities.
Mhm.
There is such a thing. And I agree with you. There are some people who are using these spiritual communities as a way to escape.
Mhm.
These are the people who, even though they don't say it, these are the I don't see color people.
Mhm.
That's when you know it's escapism.
Yeah. Yep. And I spoke about that, the whole idea of you're taking your religious paradigm that you have grown up on, and you're just putting it into your spiritual system, because a lot of times also people are just wanting to escape also from what is the word I'm looking for? It's the I the legalism that exists within religion. So it's, it has controlled my life for so long. I couldn't do certain things, I couldn't participate in certain things. So now I want to go to something else where I can feel more empowered. We talked about it today earlier about this whole empowerment, this sexual empowerment that is within the conscious community. And so, that goes into that goes goes into that as well, right? And what and I don't know if I'm gonna say it here, but we know that we can tie that back to capitalism. But like all of these things that we talk about is when it comes to the soft life, right? It That's why I asked the question. That's why the thumbnail says, can Black women truly be or truly embrace the soft life? And I think it depends on what type of Black woman you are. So when we're talking about being a revolutionary, right? I think we understand that that is not going to be necessarily a soft life. We understand that even pulling yourself away from the traditional society and separating yourself, it leads to certain inconveniences. It leads to certain because there's just some things that we're not going to participate in, and that's just it. You're not going to participate in certain things. So within that, that means that that's not necessarily going to be the soft life. Now, there's another side to it. You talked about it. You talked about the whole idea of what the soft life it can mean less, right? Like you don't want to necessarily, you're rejecting the whole idea of slaving for capitalism at this point. So there's another part to it. And what does what does the soft life look like for me or for you? It's totally different than what society has deemed the soft life or what we see on Instagram.
These people don't understand polarity
Mm-hmm.
and they don't understand cycles, right? We have the seasons that we go through. Winter comes, right? Winter comes. Winter feels barren, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is growing, right? Because right before winter we have fall. The leaves fall off the tree. Like everything seems barren, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the time of hibernation and all of these types of things. And then spring comes around, right? And then we have summer. So I think that people think polarity or any type of friction
Mm-hmm.
is struggle,
Right.
but we don't understand the necessity of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? As it pertains to our growth, our spiritual development, right? And just moving everything forward universally. Like we don't even understand that. And you out here talking about anyway. I was laughing when you was talking because I was just like, sis, like you out here talking about the divine. If you out here talking about the divine feminine sex, you are selling sex appeal.
Right.
Let's call it what it is.
Mm.
We do not need to see your cleavage to buy your CMOS.
Right. Right.
We do not need to see all of that just to be convinced that CMOS is healthy for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You talking about the divine feminine. Why aren't you guys looking up to her like a Queen Afua?
Mm-hmm.
Because you never see Queen Afua presenting herself like that, my aunt. And it has nothing to do with her age. Because when you even go further back to when she was younger, that's not the way she carries herself.
Right.
But if you talk about a person who exemplifies what you guys are trying to teach, that's somebody you can look to for that. She
Mm-hmm.
teaches about the divine feminine all the time. So a part of it is, you're exploiting yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
exploiting the sex appeal that a woman can bring, right? To convince people of what's coming out of their mouth. It
Mm-hmm.
is not necessary, and it is rooted in capitalism, whether we want to see it that way or not.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Because I have to now manipulate it. I have to manipulate, right? I have to manipulate, I have to exploit to get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are masking it as, oh, the soft voice and the divine feminine. She is sensual. She is sex. She is all these things.
Right.
Brings balance, and you sitting up there with barely a bra on, your nipples pierced. We can see it through the white the white tank top you have on. That's
Mm-hmm.
intentional. You get what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're sitting down, you're doing yoga in a bikini,
Right. Mhm.
Okay, Tombo, you stretching and all of the. Come on now. This is what I'm saying. We're so dishonest with someone. Like, says, just call it what it is. I am selling sex. I
Mhm.
am selling sex, and I know that people are going to pay to just watch me sit in my two piece. They don't want your CMOS. They're gonna buy it and they're gonna put it on this shelf. What they're supporting is the image that you are projecting, that you are putting out to the world.
Mhm.
They did not pay that 19.99 for your CMOS. Pay that 19.99 so that you can continue to exploit your sexuality, so that you could continue to display yourself in that manner and call it the divine feminine. That is what that 19.99 is for, because they're going to get the CMAS and they're going to put it on their shelf. They could care less about healthy living.
Mhm.
What they
Yep.
are paying for is so that you can continue
Mhm.
to put that image out there. They want more and they're paying for more. And you talking about CMAS and fruits. You eating fruits with your nipples out. We don't need that.
Or eating the fruit in a sexual manner because, like, it right, right.
And letting it drip, letting it drip. Okay, let
Right.
me stop. Let me stop because before they call me a hater, let me stop.
You said divine sea moss. Right. So I'm gonna wrap up this conversation, but yeah, like, so what, when it comes down to it though, I think the idea of having a soft life, it varies, right? But I think it's just having the conversation in a different way. We're in this place where, the pendulum is swinging. I talked about extremes last week, but also the correction that is happening within really what's happening within the divine feminine. So that is a actual thing, that there is a correction that is happening on this planet within the divine feminine. So within that, there are extremes that are happening, because when the pendulum, a pendulum doesn't really swing slowly, right? It doesn't swing slowly into balance. It swings hard from one side and hard to the other side, and then eventually it can come to a state, the state of balance. So right now, we as women, or even the feminine energies that are trying to get into balance. And what does that look like? So now we're talking a lot about femininity, and then even men are telling women how to be quote unquote feminine, and all of these conversations are kind of being had haphazardly. But at the end of the day, it's like we are trying to get back to that, what the feminine, the relationship with our feminine selves. And so my relationship, when we talked about this earlier with the whole religious paradigm, as far as why, and this is a whole different conversation, but why revolutionaries who were Christian look differently than they do now. And we talked about the relationship with our blackness. So my relationship with my femininity, and that is in conjunction with my relationship with my masculinity as well. But within that, I know that I am feminine. Like, what is it like? I when people see me, they see a feminine, what we consider femininity to be. So they mostly see a feminine creature. So my femininity, is in relationship with my blackness. I cannot separate my blackness from my femininity. But it seems like a lot of us women are trying to separate that into, I want femininity to look like what the white woman on the plantation's femininity look like, instead of actually creating our femininity, or our, I don't even like to use the word softness, right? But the whole idea of what that looks like within our blackness. So there are going to be times where it's not going to be easy, where we have to make sacrifices. Where we're gonna it's not gonna be a life, necessarily a life of ease or whatever, because it's about what comes after, what comes next. It's about the generations that come after us, so that they can have more comfort. Because the thing about it is, if somebody just asked me, what would I want to do? Like, it would be to be somewhere on some land, building and growing my own food, all of that. That's what soft in essence would look like to me, because I don't necessarily see an enjoyment in this grind culture. There's not an enjoyment for me within that. There's not an enjoyment where you have to decide whether like you want to spend time with your family or go to work because you need to continue to participate in this capitalistic society. So that's not necessarily an enjoyment for me. So the soft life for me would be a separation from this capitalistic society, right? And so then you have to decide what that looks like and the work that it takes. That does take sacrifice. That does take time. That does take hard work, or whatever you want, if you want to call it struggle, whatever that may be. So then within that, that is in conjunction with my blackness, because of the idea of the oppression that has happened for our people, in us wanting to feel more of that. You know, you want to feel more of that stillness. You don't want to have to believe and think that you have to continue to participate in this grind culture, and for what? Especially when you have the understanding that you are advancing another community, you are advancing another group of people. Because at the end of the day, what I look at in the mirror, what I see, I see myself as a black person, my children are black, my husband is black, the people around me are black. So why would I want to advance the people that look like me? But we get tied down into this whole, oh, we were all just one, but we don't understand the dynamics of it. We don't understand that it is them or us. We don't really understand that. We don't want to accept that, right? Dr. Marimba Ani said that. She said we have trouble with the whole idea of the genetic annihilation, the kill or be killed mentality that they have already accepted. Even the so-called good ones have accepted that mentality. That's why they don't have a problem with seeing our black people being killed, and then them asking the question, well, I just need to wait for the results to come in. I need to know what their background. They need to have all this information before they can even tell you is justified. Because why? It leads back to that genetic annihilation, and we haven't come to terms with that. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. Because I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to call the conversation, but it's going to be along the lines of what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talks about. We're not ready to confront the fear of white supremacy. That's why we continue to act like these systems don't even exist. That's why we continue to say, like, well, we're not a black community anyway. So, and that is true. There is not necessarily a black community, but stop saying that. And then you're building and exploiting off of black people's bodies. If that's the case, then you would be going to build, a lot of us in these spaces would not be building our platforms off of black people. Like, we're building our platforms off of black people, and then we're saying, oh, well, there's not a black community, and this platform is for everybody. But at the same time, you're exploiting black women on your platform. You're exploiting black men on your platform. You're coming on the platform to argue with black people because you have pain and trauma surrounding that. So again, like you said, we're being disingenuous in these conversations and not coming to these conversations with good intentions and good faith. And then we're sitting up here arguing over these little silly gender warish topics. And we have a problem with when people say, like, who hurt you? Because that's a real question. That is, when we're talking, you can hear the pain, but we're not willing to address it and talk about it and discuss it and move past it and move to a different direction. Because at the end of the day, if you're still traumatized, if you're still pain, how soft is that? if you're still traumatized? How soft can you be if you're still dealing with the pain of your mother's or your father's or your last few relationships? You really lead a soft life if you're still dealing with that trauma? So go ahead, Hanifa.
You make a lot of great points, Ma. Thank you for that. I know you're about to close out.
Mhm.
So the last thing I would say is one of the things that I think is happening with the soft life movement is that they are just trying to find a way out, like so many of us.
Mhm.
This is why all of these different spiritual communities even are growing to the point that they're growing. I would even say the conversation around Kanye and what he's saying, let's say it's the small hats. What them small hats looking like? They look like you? They don't. They don't. And so we're still talking about a system of racism, white supremacy that's in place. That's what we're discussing. And then the second thing too is that the soft life is just an attempt to seek a solution that don't require any real confrontation.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we're constantly seeking out solutions that don't require any real confrontations.
Right.
And that's even confronting because here's the thing, the system doesn't exist just outside of us,
Mhm.
that system exists within us
Right.
as
Right.
well. So this is where we talk about where some people can move to parts of Africa and they still take the system with them there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you have to begin to dismantle it within yourself at first
Mhm.
before you even have find the courage, right? Before you even find the courage to dismantle it outside of yourself, you
Mhm.
have to have the courage to dismantle it within yourself, which is uncomfortable in itself. Okay. And then my other thing is that I wrote the real soft life can never be realized in an oppressive system. Oppression is violence, no matter how subtle. So I'm going to read again. The real soft life that they're seeking can never be realized in an oppressive system because
Mhm.
oppression is violent, no matter how subtle it is.
Mm.
You're not having a soft life if you're trying to find that within this system. It's just another form of escapism, and it's just another way of trying to find a way out of it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right. Mhm.
Even like the go within movement, and I'm
Mhm.
for that. I am.
Mhm.
I'm very much for inward work, very much so, but not at the expense of doing the work outside as well,
Mhm.
right? We have always been a people who can chew gum and walk.
Mhm.
I don't know why we act like this isn't a thing for us as it pertains to attempting to dismantle some of these systems that are in place.
Right.
Well,
Right.
well, 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 I got to do this first. Some of these things are going to have to be done concurrently.
Mhm.
You get what I'm trying to say? Let the spiritual people do what's spiritual. But as long as your spirituality is towards dismantling these evil ass systems, work your magic, sis. Work your magic to the advancement of your people. Let
Mhm.
the warriors fight as long as they are fighting towards the advancement and the liberation of their people. They're
Mhm.
not turning their swords and their machetes and their guns at each other.
Right.
Because a lot of these people that we look, the Pookie and Rares, those words that they use in this space, a lot of them is a part of our warrior class.
Mhm.
Okay? Train them in revolutionary thinking. Train them in liberation thinking,
Mhm.
right? And let the warriors do what they do as long as the warriors are training and fighting towards the advancement of their people.
Mhm.
The scholars, let them teach as long as they are teaching towards getting ourselves out of this mess. Okay? The people that do Reiki, all of this stuff, let them do these things. We keep acting like, well, you're doing that. That's not going to work. And I want to be careful because I'm not saying our spiritual people, though the spiritual component of our people don't have a place. But what is your spirituality towards? Do you get what I'm saying? Are you towards healing our people?
Mhm.
from the years and the centuries of abuse and
Mm-hmm.
pain, right? Is the healing towards the let the healers do the healing. When our people come out from these environments, there's a and I go back to this book because that's my recent book. That's something that Malidoma speaks about in Of the Water and of the Spirit as well. When the Catholic priest kidnapped him and he came back to his people as a young adult, he had to go through an initiation. He had to go through a cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
They were afraid to even initiate him, to give him access to the secrets of
Mm-hmm.
their people, right? Because they're like, what is he going to do with it? Because this, he no longer has his own mind. There's a cleansing that has to happen. Our healers, let them do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's towards what? The liberation and the advancement of our people. So let people function in their functions. Whatever you're good at, do
Yes.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your gifts are, function in them. But towards what? Because a lot of our people are using their gifts and their intellectual property and their energy and their strength and their youth towards the advancement of a people that don't look like them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be welcoming of all sectors. The healers, what is it towards? The warriors, what is it towards? The spiritualists, what is it towards? Our scholars, what is it towards? Our teachers, what is it towards?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have to show up functioning in the same thing, Ma'at, to walk towards the same outcome.
Mm-hmm.
What is our target? What is our focus? Get to that and get us on one accord towards that. And it doesn't matter what function they show up in because they're going to be working towards that. Our doctors, our nurses, practitioners, all of that. Get them on the same accord towards the same target. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, and to the soft life thing, for me, it can never, we have to understand, it can never be realized in an
Mm-hmm.
oppressive system. Because oppression is violence, and there's nothing soft about violence.
Right.
That's what I got to say to that.
Thank you, sis. Thank you for being here. As y'all can see, this is why I invited her for this conversation. But I mean, this is how our conversations be on the phone. So we just we just giving you a highlight of what we be talking about on the phone. But I always appreciate you, always enjoy having conversations with you. Shout out to the chat. Once again, y'all came in, had a great conversation with us. I really appreciate everyone who comes through and have the conversation. Next week we will be talking. We will have having the. I'll have a few brothers on next week to talk about the whole. We'll be talking about systems. These systems of oppression. We're going to be finalizing. It's next week the end of October. Like, oh, this month is, yeah, it's the last.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the
it's
last.
it's here. It's here.
Yeah,
I'm looking
it's
forward to that conversation. I will be tuning in and listening in because I know that panel is going to be very interesting. So I will be tuning in the chat about these systems because we want to act like they don't exist. So
right.
okay.
So I am excited about that. Next week, we'll be talking about those systems. And make sure if you're not subscribed to my sister here, go ahead and go on over there right now. Subscribe. She's gonna have a really great conversation tomorrow. I'm excited about that conversation. I'll shout out to Spider Pig. Okay. Hi, Spider Pig. Did TWP Popcorn send you over? Shout out to you. Thank you for coming through. And I just appreciate all of you for being here, having the conversation, listening in. If you catch the replay, just leave a comment and tell us what you think about the whole soft life. Not against the soft life, but I am against the advancement of, just like my sister just broke it down, the advancement of our people. And that is the biggest thing. So what does that look like? What does the soft life, in the essence, when we talk about the soft life, what does that what does that help? How does that help us? I think I forgot who said it in the chat. It might have been Water Bearer Attuned. Like, what does that look like for us? You know, um, what is it? The soft life. How does it help us as a community? How does it help your children? Or is it just an individualistic concept where it's like, okay, it's my turn now, right? So, with that being said, I am going to end this conversation. And I appreciate everyone that came through. As always, peace, family. I will see you next time.